Chapter 1: Girlfriend and the Old King Next Door. Don't, there's a chance my boyfriend might come back to get something, we can't do this in my house. Inside the room, the woman's voice was filled with nervousness and uneasiness, as if a frightened deer. Immediately afterward, a man's voice sounded. What are you afraid of? He has already gone to work, I personally saw him go downstairs in the neighborhood, it is impossible to come back. This strange man's voice with a hint of arrogance and recklessness. Early morning sunlight through the gaps in the leaves sprinkled on the street, forming a patch of light. The gentle breeze brought a hint of coolness to the air. As usual, I was dressed in a neat suit, tied my tie, and was in high spirits as I prepared to go to work. My boss had an important meeting today that required me to drive to pick him up early. I walked towards the parking lot with firm steps, my mind already thinking about the image of successfully receiving my boss. However, when I walked to the parking lot and reached into my bag for the car keys to start the car, I found that the car keys were missing. My heart sank, and a feeling of anxiety and chagrin instantly came over me. I carefully searched through my bag and fumbled around in my pockets, but I still couldn't find the car keys. I tried to remember how I went out in the morning and wondered if I had left the keys at home. I had no choice but to decide to go home and get the keys. I turned around and walked quickly in the direction of my home, and along the way, my mood was a little irritable. I was worried that I might have delayed my boss at work because I went back to get the keys, and at the same time, I was blaming myself for my carelessness. As I walked to the door of my house, a strange feeling came over me. Everything around me seemed to have become unusually quiet, so quiet that it was a bit disturbing. I gently pushed the door open, ready to quickly find my keys and leave. However, just the moment I stepped into the door of my home, a sound came from inside the room. It made my mind go blank, and my body was unable to move as if it had been immobilized. I couldn't believe my ears, couldn't believe what was happening in front of me. My girlfriend, the woman I loved so much, was actually in our home with another man. Anger, shock, disappointment, pain, all kinds of complicated emotions like a tidal wave surged to my heart. With trembling hands, I slowly pushed open the door of the house. In the living room, there was chaos. My girlfriend and my next-door neighbor, Old Wang, were standing there, and both of them had very panicked expressions. Old Wang was tall, wearing a casual t-shirt and shorts, with a look of embarrassment and guilt on his face. As for my girlfriend, her hair was a bit messy and her eyes were full of helplessness and fear. What are you guys doing? My voice trembled with anger. Old Wang froze instantly when he heard my voice, he opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. When my girlfriend saw me, tears came to her eyes, she rushed over and hugged me, crying, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." I pushed my girlfriend away and looked angrily at Old Wang. Why are you in my house? What are you doing with my girlfriend? The old king stammered and said, I just came to borrow a thing, a moment of confusion. Of course I won't believe his bullshit, I rushed over and grabbed his collar and gave him a hard punch. Do you think I am a fool? Borrowing something would do such a thing? Old Wang was hit by me and fell to the ground, he covered his face and didn't dare to look at me. I turned around and looked at my girlfriend. Why are you doing this to me? Am I not good to you? The girlfriend cried and said, I was wrong, I was confused. He said that he just came to chat and didn't expect it to turn out like this. I looked at my girlfriend's familiar face, and my heart was filled with pain and disappointment. We had experienced so many good times together, spent countless days and nights together, and now, she betrayed me. You get the hell out of here. I pointed at Old Wang and yelled. Old Wang rolled and ran out of the house. I sat on the sofa, holding my head in my hands, my heart filled with pain and confusion. I don't know what to do, I don't know if our marriage can continue. My girlfriend knelt in front of me, crying and begging me to forgive her. I really know it's wrong, I will never do it again, please forgive me. I looked at my girlfriend, my heart was full of contradictions. On the one hand, I loved her deeply, we had so many beautiful memories. On the other hand, her betrayal was unacceptable to me, my heart was filled with pain and anger. I stood up, walked to the window and looked out the window. The sun was still shining brightly, but my heart was filled with gloom. I didn't know how to face this cruel reality, I didn't know where our future would go. Just when I was annoyed beyond measure, with endless anger and pain surging in my heart, the boss's phone suddenly called. The crisp ringtone seemed particularly abrupt at this moment, yet it was like a timely reminder, pulling me out of my chaotic emotions for the time being. I pulled out my cell phone from my pocket with trembling hands, and when I saw my boss's number displayed on the screen, my heart was in a panic. As my boss's driver, I had to be on standby at all times, it was my duty. I tried to calm myself, took a deep breath, and then pressed the answer button. "Boss, I'll be right there to pick you up." My voice was a bit hoarse, but I still tried my best to remain professional and calm. The boss briefly explained the time and place on the other end of the phone and hung up. I slowly put down my cell phone, and my gaze once again fell on my girlfriend. The girlfriend's face was full of tears, and her eyes were full of remorse and pleading, not daring to meet my eyes. However, at this moment, I no longer had the time and energy to deal with my girlfriend. I had to pick up my boss as soon as possible, and I couldn't delay my work because of personal problems. I turned around and stopped looking at my girlfriend, but my heart was like a huge stone weighing down. In this instant, I made a decision. Let's break up, don't contact each other in the future, all the stuff is yours. I quickly finished the sentence with my girlfriend with a decisive tone. When my girlfriend heard these words, her body shook violently, she cried out and tried to pull me back, but I flung away her hand without hesitation. I didn't have time to pull my hair out with this woman. My work doesn't allow me to slack off or procrastinate in the slightest, and in this moment, I don't want to face her betrayal and lies anymore. I stride out of the house and slam the door as hard as I can, as if to shut out all the pain and worry behind me. Walking on the street, the sun was still shining brightly, but I couldn't feel a trace of warmth. My heart was filled with loss and confusion, not knowing where to go in the future. I walked quickly towards the parking lot while trying to adjust my emotions. I told myself that I couldn't let my personal problems affect my work, I had to stay focused and calm. Chapter 2: Breaking Up. As I got into my car and started the engine, that familiar mechanical roar calmed me down a little. I took a deep breath, then stepped on the gas and drove towards the location specified by my boss. Along the way, images of my girlfriend and old Wang kept surfacing in my mind, and the pain in my heart was like a shadow. But I knew that I couldn't let these emotions affect my work. I had to focus on making sure my boss was safe and the trip went smoothly. Finally, I arrived at the location designated by my boss. The boss was already waiting there, and when he saw me, he nodded slightly. I quickly got out of the car and opened the door for my boss, then stood respectfully. The boss sat in the car, and I closed the door, then returned to the driver's seat, started the car, and slowly drove away. During the drive, I tried to remain as silent as possible, looking intently at the road ahead. The boss seemed to notice something different about me, but he didn't ask much. I was grateful in my heart for my boss's understanding, and at the same time, I was even more determined to do a good job. As the car traveled, my mood gradually calmed down. I began to think about my future. I didn't know how to face my girlfriend's betrayal, and I didn't know if our relationship could continue. But I knew that I couldn't stay immersed in pain, I had to face the reality bravely and find my own way out. Perhaps, I should focus more on my work and forget the pain by working hard. Perhaps, I should re-examine my life and look for new goals and directions. No matter what, I can't let this blow break me down. I have to stand strong and move on. In the following days, I devoted myself to my work. I came to the company early every day to make all kinds of preparations for my boss. I conscientiously completed every trip to ensure the safety and comfort of my boss. Outside of work, I also began to learn some new knowledge and skills to improve my ability. As time went by, my work was recognized and appreciated by my boss. The boss gave me a salary increase. I didn't let down my boss's trust and worked hard to fulfill every job and achieved good results. However, despite some achievements at work, there was always a hurt in my heart that could not be erased. Whenever it was late at night, I would think of my girlfriend's betrayal and my heart was filled with pain and helplessness. I don't know if I can truly let go of this relationship, and I don't know if I can still find true happiness in the future. But I know that life goes on and I can't stay stuck in the pain of the past. I have to face the future bravely and try to find my own happiness. No matter how rough the road ahead is, I have to walk on with determination. On this day, I stood in front of the company's bathroom as usual. The air around me seemed to be frozen, dull, and depressing. I quietly leaned against the wall, holding a cigarette in my hand, the smoke curled up and gradually dissipated in the air. My mood was like this smoke, confused and irritated. I am like a door god, guarding this small corner. My eyes stare blankly ahead, but my thoughts have long since drifted into the distance. My heart is full of contradictions and struggles, not knowing where I should go. The pressure of work, the trivialities of life, as well as the unbearable emotional experience, everything makes me feel exhausted. Annoyance spread in my heart, I took a hard drag on a cigarette, trying to calm myself down. However, the irritation followed me like a shadow, and I could never get rid of it. I began to think about my life and how to go on in the future. Ever since my girlfriend's betrayal, it was as if my world had collapsed. What was once a beautiful memory has now become a painful torment, and every image is like a sharp blade, piercing my heart. I don't believe in women anymore. What was once an oath of friendship and sweet words now seems to be nothing more than a lie. Her betrayal made me lose faith in love and doubt women. I feel like an abandoned child, lonely and helpless. Who else could I trust in this world? I began to doubt everything, the beauty of humanity and the reality of love. I decided to die alone. Since love is untrustworthy and women are unreliable, why should I bother to look for that illusory feeling? I'd rather live alone than go through the pain of another betrayal. I'm going to close my heart and never let anyone come into my world again. I want to learn to face the challenges of life alone, and no longer rely on others. However, when I calmed down, I began to doubt my decision again. Is growing old alone really the life I want to live? Am I going to live in the shadow of my past for the rest of my life and never be able to come out? I remembered the dreams I once had, the beautiful visions I had. I am not willing to give up my life like this. I want to find that self-confident and energetic self again. Perhaps I should give myself a chance to get to know the world and women again. Not all women are untrustworthy. Maybe one day in the future, I will meet the one who really understands me, loves me, and cherishes me. She will use her sincerity and kindness to melt the ice in my heart and make me believe in the power of love again. But I can't do that now. I need time to heal my wounds and time to re-examine my life. I need to learn to let go of the pain of the past and face the challenges of the future with courage. I need to make myself stronger and more mature. Only in this way can I truly come out of the shadows and welcome a new life. Standing at the door of the company's bathroom, I took a deep breath and then slowly exhaled a mouthful of smoke. I know that this is a long process, but I am willing to try. I believe that as long as I don't give up, one day I will find my own happiness. At this moment, I stood in the slightly dim corridor, thinking about my life as a pool of stagnant water, while looking back at the closed bathroom door behind me from time to time. Behind that door, the boss was cheating with his new secretary inside. My task, absurd and helpless, was to watch the door for my boss, preventing anyone from interrupting their good deed. I felt incredibly irritated, like there was a mess in my mind that I couldn't sort out. I didn't understand why I had to do such a ridiculous thing here. But I was just an ordinary employee who had to listen to all sorts of unreasonable arrangements from my boss for a meager salary. Chapter 3: Unbalance. Looking at that door, my thoughts drifted away. The boss's life was so nourishing that he could enjoy all sorts of luxuries and indulgences as he pleased. He drove a luxury car, lived in a mansion, and was always surrounded by all sorts of beautiful women. And what about me? My life is so miserable. Every day, I get up early to pick up the boss, in order to rush, often on the road to buy a random bun as breakfast. In the company, I have to face the heavy workload and harsh boss. The slightest mistake will be criticized and blamed. When I returned to my small rented house after work, loneliness and exhaustion followed me. I have no time to enjoy life and no money to pursue my dreams. I could only struggle in this endless busyness and pressure. My heart was unbalanced. Why is fate so unfair? Why can the boss live such a cozy life while I have to stand guard here for his wrongdoings? I work hard and follow the rules, but I don't get what I deserve. The boss, on the other hand, can do whatever he wants with his position and wealth. This unfairness made me feel angry and helpless. I began to reflect on my life choices. Maybe I should be brave enough to pursue my dreams instead of wasting time here. I could go learn new skills and look for better job opportunities. Or I could try to start a business and fight for my future. However, these ideas just flashed through my mind and were soon overwhelmed by the pressure of reality. I didn't have the courage to take a risk. I was afraid of failing, afraid of losing this present life which was not as good as I wanted but at least stable. Time passed by and the bathroom door remained closed. My heart was getting heavier and heavier, as if there was a boulder pressing down on my heart. I don't know how much longer I have to stand here, nor do I know how this matter will affect my future. All I know is that at this moment, my heart is full of contradictions and pain. Suddenly, a sound of footsteps came, and I stared nervously at the end of the corridor. What do I do if someone comes over? How do I stop them from discovering my boss's secret? My heart began to race and cold sweat broke out on my palms. I prayed silently in my heart that no one would come over. Fortunately, the footsteps faded away and no one noticed anything unusual here. Finally, the bathroom door opened, and Zhang Yeye walked out. She had a contented smile on her face, as if nothing had happened. She was disheveled and her hair was slightly disheveled. She calmly glanced at me and walked away, as if nothing had happened. That glance was like a quiet lake being gently brushed by the breeze. The ripples were so subtle that they were almost imperceptible. Her eyes were clear and indifferent, without a ripple, just like that, quietly gazing at me, as if looking at an insignificant passerby. Her long hair fluttered slightly, drawing a beautiful arc in the air. She slightly raised her chin, her posture elegant and determined, without the slightest hesitation or lingering, just gently turned around and left with a light step. Her skirt swayed gently with her movements, like a falling flower petal, soundlessly blending into the surrounding air. I stood in place in a daze, an indescribably complex emotion welling up in my heart. I don't know how to describe my feelings at this moment, I just feel quite fucked up in my heart. My gaze did not follow her departing back, but involuntarily cast to the direction of the bathroom. It was as if there was an invisible force attracting me there, making it impossible for me to move my eyes away. Just then, the boss also walked out from inside the bathroom at this time. That door slowly opened, and the boss's figure gradually became clear in front of me. His pace was not tight or slow, carrying a calm and steady aura. His face carried a trace of fatigue that was left behind after just entertaining himself. His face was slightly dark, and the fine lines at the corners of his eyes seemed to be even more pronounced against the fatigue. That trace of fatigue was not just physical exertion, it was more like a kind of spiritual weariness, as if his heart longed for a moment of peace after a battle. His eyes revealed a kind of contentment, a kind of satisfaction after finding a rare moment of joy in his busy life. His eyes narrowed slightly, flickering with a soft glow, as if he was reminiscing about the pleasurable time he had just had. This kind of satisfaction did not come from material acquisition, but a kind of spiritual relaxation and pleasure. He glanced at me and nodded slightly, very satisfied with me keeping watch. That glance seemed to carry a kind of recognition and encouragement, making me feel my worth in this moment. His nodding motion, though slight, was full of deep meaning, as if telling me that he saw all my efforts and dedication in his eyes. "You get off work, go handle your business." The boss's voice was calm and strong, carrying an unquestionable authority. His words were concise and clear, yet full of care. He seemed to have sensed my inner fatigue and distress and gave me this opportunity to take care of my own business. These words were like warm sunshine that poured over my heart, making me feel my boss's thoughtfulness and understanding. The boss gently patted my shoulder, as if giving me a silent comfort. The strength of that hand was just right, neither too heavy nor too light. His palm was warm and generous, conveying a sense of strength and support. The gesture, though simple, contained endless care. In this instant, it was as if I felt a fatherly warmth that allowed me to find a trace of dependence in my exhaustion and confusion. Then he turned and left, leaving me standing there alone. His back gradually moved farther and farther away, gradually disappearing from my sight. I looked in the direction of his departure, my heart filled with gratitude and emotion. The appearance of the boss was like a bright light, illuminating the way forward for me when I was lost. His care and understanding made me feel a touch of warmth in this exhausting life. I took a deep breath and was ready to go home and get some rest. During this time, I was tired because of my breakup with my ex-girlfriend. The hurt in my heart was like a dark cloud hanging over me, making me unable to extricate myself. I felt as if my world had lost its color and everything had become dull. Every memory was like a sharp blade that pierced my heart. I longed for peace and rest, hoping to find a shred of comfort in my own little nest. I dragged my heavy steps slowly in the direction of home. Along the way, my thoughts were still in turmoil, but I knew that I needed time to heal my wounds and regain my courage and confidence in life. Just as I arrived at the door of my rented house, I saw my ex-girlfriend surprisingly waiting for me at the door. At that moment, I was furious to the extreme. Chapter 4: What are you doing here? It was as if a new strength had been injected into my originally tired body, and a mixture of surprise, doubt, and anger instantly flooded my mind. I approached her slowly, my steps a little heavy. Her figure seemed a little blurry in the dim light, yet so familiar. She stood there quietly, her head slightly lowered, her long hair casually falling over her shoulders, as if a still picture. My gaze was fixed on her, countless questions tumbling in my mind. "What are you doing here?" There was an undisguised anger in my voice. The anger was not without cause. After all, we had just gone through a painful breakup. Those former fights, hurts, and disappointments were still fresh in my mind, and now her presence left me feeling incredibly confused and irritated. I clenched my fists and tried to control my emotions. I didn't understand why. She was here, was she here to cause me more pain again? My eyes were filled with questioning, hoping that she would give me a reasonable explanation. However, she only lifted her head slightly and looked at me with an elusive glint in her eyes. The anger in my heart burned even hotter. I thought of all those days we had spent together, all those wonderful memories now replaced by a shattered reality. I had given so much to her, only to end up breaking up. And now, she appeared in front of me without warning. How could I not be angry? I stood there, staring angrily at her, waiting for her answer. The air around me seemed to freeze, only the sound of my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew that at this moment, my anger had reached its peak. Let's make up, nothing really happened between old Wang and me. My ex-girlfriend condescended to me. Her voice trembled slightly with an eager longing. Her eyes were full of aggression, and her eyes were slightly red, as if they might fall into tears at any moment. She took a slight step forward, close to me, her hands tightly twisted together. You must believe me, there is really nothing between me and old Wang, nothing. Her tone was full of pleading, as if she was praying for my forgiveness. I looked at her aggrieved look, but a complex emotion welled up in my heart. The trust that was once there was broken at that moment, and now her explanation seemed so pale and powerless. Nothing happened? Then why were you with him like that inside our room? Why did you hide your relationship from me? There was a questioning tone in my voice, anger and disappointment mingling in my heart. She lowered her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I just treated him as a normal friend, we really didn't do anything to wrong you. I know I was wrong, I shouldn't have kept contact with him from you, but please believe me, the only person I love is you. Her voice got smaller and smaller, and finally became almost a murmur. I was silent, the anger in my heart gradually subsided, replaced by a deep helplessness. We were once so in love, but now we were in such an awkward situation because of an outsider. I don't know how to face her pleas, and I don't know if we can ever go back to the past. I know you probably won't believe anything I say now, but I will prove my innocence with my actions. Can you please give me another chance for us to start over? She raised her head, her eyes full of expectation and hope. I looked at her, hesitating in my mind. On the one hand, I still loved her and didn't want to give up our relationship so easily. On the other hand, I was afraid of being hurt again, afraid that she would betray my trust again. I don't know how to choose, I can only stand there, silent. Please, you really misunderstood me. Lao Wang just came to our house to fix my faucet, nothing happened. The ex-girlfriend pleaded to me. Her voice was trembling, her eyes were full of eagerness and longing, and that gaze was staring straight at me, as if she wanted to pass on a stream of grievances and truths within her heart to me. Her hands unconsciously gripped my sleeve, her body slightly leaning forward, as if she wanted to use this way to close the distance between us, so that I can more truly feel her sincerity. After you went to work that day, the faucet suddenly broke, the water kept flowing, I was alone at home, really no way, so I had to find Lao Wang to help. He really just simply came to fix the faucet, there was nothing else between us. She explained eagerly, speaking very fast, afraid that I would interrupt her or not believe her words. I could see that her eyes were already red and tears were welling up in them, as if they would come out of her eyes if I showed the slightest bit more distrust. I know that we've had a misunderstanding over something recently that made you suspicious of me, but this time it's really because you're overthinking things. When old Wang came, I just opened the door for him and then watched him fix the faucet from the side, we didn't even say a few extra words. She struggled to remember the day, trying to make me believe her through the details. After he finished fixing the faucet, he was ready to leave, and just in time you came back to get your keys. It was really that simple. How could I possibly do anything to wrong you? You've always been the most important thing in my heart. Her voice gradually became choked, and a pained look appeared on her face. Please, believe me this time, don't dismiss our relationship just because of a misunderstanding. We have experienced so many good times together, are you really willing to give up on our relationship just because of this? She looked at me blearily, waiting for my response, and that pitiful look made people feel pity. However, the rift of trust that I once had made me still filled with anger inside me at this moment, and it was impossible for me to believe this explanation of hers anymore. Get lost, I won't believe what you say. I coldly said. My voice seemed to be wrapped in polar frost, each word transmitting a bone-chilling chill. My eyes were like sharp blades, stabbing straight at my ex-girlfriend, not a trace of warmth in them, only determination and anger. I clenched my teeth, cheeks slightly bulging from the force, hands clenched fists, nails almost embedded in the palms of my hands. The love that was once there has been burned out by anger and disappointment at this moment, leaving only endless indifference. Do you think I'll still be as stupid as before and easily believe these lies of yours? Fixing the faucet? This kind of lame excuse you can also say. I snorted a laugh that was full of mockery and bitterness. I glared at her fiercely and continued, "There is no longer any trust to speak of between us. You've hurt me over and over again, and now you want to salvage everything with a few pale explanations? It's simply a dream." Chapter 5. We're over. My chest rose and fell violently, the waves inside me unable to calm down. Those pains and sufferings that were once because of her came to my mind like a tidal wave at this moment, making me even more determined. "Get out of my sight, I don't want to see you again, nor do I want to hear any more of your sophistry. We're over, for good." I practically yelled the words, my voice echoing in the silent hallway. I turned around and turned my back to her, not wanting to see her hypocritical face again. I knew that dwelling on it would only add to the pain, and I had to be ruthless and cut it all off. Although there is still a tingle in my heart, I understand that only in this way can I make a fresh start and get out of this relationship that is full of gloom and doom. "Please, trust me one more time, oh," she cried aloud. Her voice was trembling and mournful, with endless despair and pleading. Tears rushed out of her eyes like a drowning flood, crossing her pale cheeks and converging into drops at her chin, dripping down continuously and splashing on the ground as if they were fragments of her broken heart. Her body also trembled violently as she cried, and her shoulders kept shrugging, as if she was overwhelmed by a great pain that she couldn't extricate herself from. "I really didn't lie to you, why can't you just give me another chance?" She cried and shouted at the same time, her voice becoming hoarse from crying, that hoarse voice full of pain and remorse. She took a step forward and tried to pull my arm, her eyes filled with longing and supplication. "You know that I love you, how could I possibly do something wrong to you? Old Wang really just came to help fix the faucet, this is just a misunderstanding, a big misunderstanding, Her eyes were fixed on me, hoping to find a hint of relief from my face, a hint of the possibility of being willing to believe her. "We were once so beautiful, we went through so many bits and pieces together, have you forgotten all that? Are you going to dismiss all our feelings just because of this one misunderstanding?" She cried her heart out, her voice filled with nostalgia and reluctance for the good old days. The air around her seemed to be infected by her crying, becoming oppressive and heavy. Her cries echoed in the silent space, as if it was a sad elegy, speaking of her unrequited love for this relationship and her fear of losing her trust. "Please, believe me this one more time, just this one time, okay? I will prove it to you properly, I really didn't lie." She kept repeating these words, her voice getting weaker and weaker, as if her strength was also draining away along with her tears. But her eyes never left me, doggedly waiting for my response, even if it is just a tiny hope, she is not willing to give up. "Oh, he repaired the faucet, took off his clothes and only left his pants, right?" I sneered. My words were full of mockery and skepticism, and my eyes revealed a deep distrust. That sneer was like a sharp knife, stabbing straight at her as if to completely shatter her seemingly reasonable explanation. I frowned tightly, the corners of my mouth rising slightly in a disdainful smile. "You think I'd believe such a ridiculous reason? He fixes a faucet as far as stripping down to his pants? What kind of play is this?" My voice raises a few notches with obvious anger and resentment. With my hands clasped in front of my chest, I leaned forward slightly and forced myself closer to her, continuing, "Do you think I'm as easy to fool as a 3-year-old? Stop using these ridiculous excuses to perfume me. If it was really just a simple matter of fixing the faucet, why did he hug you and make those strange gestures? And how do you explain this?" My gaze was fixed on her, not letting go of any slight change of expression on her face. "We've been together for so long, my trust in you isn't something you can just trample on. Now you're trying to convince me that there's nothing between you and him with such an outrageous claim, do you think it's possible?" I shook my head as I spoke, the anger in my heart once again ignited. The sneer was always on my face, but it didn't have the slightest bit of warmth, just expressing my extreme disgust and non-acceptance of her explanation. I paced in place, my emotions growing more and more agitated. "Did you think I would easily believe such a flawed lie? Do you think I'm easy to fool? This time you must give me a reasonable explanation instead of using this ridiculous reason to fob me off." I stopped and looked at her again, waiting for her response, my eyes filled with a sense of oppression, as if I was forcing her to tell the truth. "He was just worried about the water getting his clothes wet, so he took his shirt off leaving. Only his pants, it's not what you think," the ex-girlfriend explained. Her voice carried a hint of urgency, and her eyes revealed a hint of panic, as if she was trying to grab the last straw, trying to make me believe this seemingly reasonable explanation. She unconsciously raised her volume and spoke a little faster. "If you think about it, the faucet was broken so suddenly that water was spraying everywhere. In order to fix it as soon as possible, and he didn't want his clothes to get wet with water, that's why he took off his shirt and pants off. It really doesn't mean anything else, don't misunderstand. As she said that, she used her hands to gesture the scene, hoping that I could understand what she meant more intuitively. I could see an anxious glint in her eyes, her brows slightly furrowed, and a hint of aggravation on her face. I know it may seem far-fetched to you to explain it like that now, but that's just the way it is. He was simply trying to fix the faucet, nothing more. You have to believe me, how could I lie to you? Her words were full of sincerity, even with a hint of a pleading tone. She took a step forward and moved closer to me, her eyes locked on me. We've been together for so long, you should know me as a person. I wouldn't do that kind of thing to wrong you, this time is really just an accident, a coincidence. You can't dismiss our relationship just because of this. Her voice gradually became choked and tears were welling up in her eyes, as if they would come out of her eyes if I showed even the slightest bit of distrust. I looked at her silently, anger still filling my heart. Her explanation sounded like it had some truth to it, but then again, all the previous signs made it impossible for me to let it go easily. Alright, don't say so much, I saw it with my own eyes. I coldly said. My voice seemed like the cold wind of the poles, cold and determined, without a trace of temperature. Every word was like an ice-cold bullet, shooting straight at my ex-girlfriend, causing the words she had been eagerly trying to explain to instantly choke in her throat. I frowned tightly, my eyes revealing deep disappointment and disgust. The facts that you have seen with your own eyes are right in front of you, what meaning do you think these pale explanations of yours have now? My tone was filled with mockery, the corners of my mouth slightly turned down, revealing an expression of disdain. I saw him in our house, stripped down to his pants, and you were right next to him. How do you expect me to believe that this is a mere faucet repair incident? Do you think I'm blind? Or do you think I'm stupid enough to easily believe such a ridiculous excuse? The more I spoke, the more agitated I became, my hands unconsciously clenched into fists, and my body trembled slightly from anger. Chapter 6 Speaking the Truth. I glared at her fiercely, as if I wanted to convey all the anger and pain inside me through my eyes. Once, I trusted you so much, but you treated that trust like this. Now no matter what you say, it won't change the truth of what I saw. My voice echoed in the silent space, extra loud and determined. There is nothing left to say between us, your behavior has completely broken the trust between us and destroyed the relationship we once had. Stop trying to make excuses for your wrongdoings, I don't want to hear it anymore and I won't believe it anymore. With those words, I turned away and stopped looking at her. I knew that any more words would seem so powerless in front of this cruel reality. I can only use this indifferent way to protect myself, so that I will not be hurt more deeply, although my heart is still as painful as a knife, but I understand that there are some things, once it happens, it can never be undone. Don't you really want to break up with me like this? Woo. The former girlfriend cried. Her voice was full of despair and helplessness, and that cry seemed to penetrate the heart and make people feel pity. Tears rolled down her cheeks like broken beads, wetting her shirt, and her shoulders kept trembling as she cried, as if her entire body was plunged into an endless abyss of sorrow. She took a step forward and tried to pull on my coat, her eyes filled with pleading. I know I was wrong, but can't we really give each other another chance? We used to love each other so much, have you forgotten all those wonderful memories? She choked out, her voice thick with a nasal tone and endless pain. I don't want to lose you like this, what would I do without you? Her eyes revealed deep fear and reluctance, as if she was about to lose the most precious thing in her life. After the breakup, how am I going to face the days without you? It's all too sudden, I really can't accept it. She cried while talking about her inner feelings, that miserable look makes people look at the heartache. Oh. Can't you trust me this time? I promise I won't make you sad again in the future, I won't let such a thing happen again. She cried so hard that her voice became hoarse. We've been through so many storms together, is it going to end completely just because of this one misunderstanding? I'm not willing, I'm really not willing. Her tears kept flowing, as if she wanted to vent out all the remorse and pain inside her. The air around her seemed to become oppressed because of her crying. She stood there, lonely and helpless, just kept crying, praying that I would not leave her, not to end this relationship. However, although my heart also has a million tangled and unwilling to give up, but that witnessed the scene has always been like a chasm that cannot be crossed, straddling the gap between us, so that I am full of doubts and confused about this relationship. I don't know if I can trust her again, if I can regain the pure trust and love I once had. Tell you what, I'll give you one last chance if you tell the truth. I suddenly thought of a way to force her to tell the truth. My eyes revealed a hint of firmness and determination, but also a hint of anticipation. I knew this could be my last attempt to get to the bottom of things. I took a deep breath to calm myself down a little, then slowly said, "You should be clear that this is the biggest concession I can make. I also don't want this to be an unexplained end between us, I need a real answer." My voice was calm, but it carried an undeniable power. I stared intently into her eyes, trying to catch even a hint of hesitation or weakness in her eyes. "If you really cherish the relationship we once had, if you still care about me, then tell me everything as it is right now. Don't hide anything anymore, don't use those seemingly reasonable but flawed excuses to perfume me." I increased my tone of voice, hoping that she would understand how serious and determined I was at this moment. "I will decide whether we still have a future based on the truth you tell. You have to know that once trust is broken, it's very difficult to rebuild it, but I'm still willing to give you this one more chance for your sake, for the sake of the good we once had." I clenched my fists slightly, and inside I was actually very nervous and torn. On the one hand, I was afraid of hearing an even more unpleasant truth, and on the other hand, I longed for her to be really honest with me, so that we could possibly regain the trust and closeness we once had. "Think about it, this is your last chance. I hope you make the right choice and don't leave us all with regrets." I concluded, and then waited quietly for her response. The air was filled with tension and anticipation, as if time had stood still in this moment. Her eyes flickered. "If I tell you the truth, will you really give me a chance?" Her voice was tinged with a hint of uncertainty and hesitation, and her eyes revealed complex emotions, both fear of confessing the truth and desire for that slightest possible chance. She slightly bit her lower lip, her hands unconsciously twisted together, and her body seemed to be trembling slightly. "I'm really afraid of losing you, that's why I..." She wanted to say something, her eyes fluttering, not daring to look directly into my eyes. "I know that you may not believe much of what I say now, but I really hope that you can give me another chance. If I tell the truth, can you really reconsider our relationship like you said?" Her voice was getting smaller and smaller, with a kind of cautious tentativeness. I could see the struggle within her, as she weighed whether to risk telling the truth, and feared the worse outcome she would face if she did. A tangle flashed in her eyes, and her brow furrowed slightly, as if she was engaged in a fierce battle of ideas. "I just don't want us to end up like this, after all, we had so many good memories." She lifted her head and looked at me again, with some more pleading in her eyes. "You're really important to me, and I don't want to lose you completely just because of this incident. So, if I tell the truth, you must keep your promise and give me a chance, okay?" There was a hint of pleading in her tone, and there seemed to be some unspeakable secrets hidden in those twinkling eyes, making me even more curious about the truth she was about to say. At the same time, there was also a hint of caution, wondering what kind of answer would await me. Chapter 7. Only once? I'll give you a chance if you tell me. I take a deep breath. I try to make my voice sound smooth and firm, trying to convey to her a sense of determination that I will do what I say I will do. My gaze locks onto her, my eyes revealing a hint of anticipation, even though the pain and anger from being hurt still fills my heart. But in this moment, I still wanted her to be honest and give me a satisfactory answer. I straightened my spine, as if it would give me more strength to face whatever she might say next. "I mean it, you should know me, I always do what I say." I emphasized once again, trying to allay her concerns and get her to drop her guard and tell the truth without reservation. It has not been easy for us to get to this point, and I don't want to completely give up on our relationship just because of a misunderstanding or concealment. So, as long as you truthfully tell me what really happened, I'm willing to revisit our relationship and give each other a chance to start over. I slowed down my speech so that every word would clearly reach her ears, hoping that she would feel the sincerity in my words. I prayed silently in my heart that she wouldn't let me down again, that she would seize this last chance to let me know the truth. At the same time, I also prepared for the worst. If the truth she said still couldn't let me off the hook, then I could only be ruthless and completely end this relationship full of ups and downs. My clenched fist slightly loosened, trying to keep my emotions calm as I waited for her response. The air was filled with tension and anticipation. "Okay, that I'll tell you, I did have an affair with Old King, but it was only that one day, that one time," she said to me. Her voice was slightly trembling, with a hint of guilt and helplessness, and her eyes showed complex emotions, as if there was both remorse for her behavior and a sense of relief after finally confessing. After saying these words, she quietly lowered her head, not daring to look me in the eyes again. I could feel that her inner struggle had finally found an exit at this moment, but this exit was like a sharp blade, piercing straight into my heart. Her hands unconsciously gripped the corners of her coat, and her body stiffened slightly, as if waiting for my stormy response. "I know I was wrong, I really regret it." Her voice carried a hint of crying. "That day, I didn't know what was wrong with me, and in a moment of confusion I made such a mistake." She tried to explain, but seemed so powerless. Since then, I have been living in guilt and remorse every day, and I can't imagine what I would do if I lost you." She raised her head and looked at me with tear-stained eyes that were filled with supplication. "I really hope you can forgive me this time, and I promise it will never happen again." Her words were full of sincerity. "We have been through so much together, are you really willing to give up our relationship just because of this one mistake?" Her voice was getting more and more eager, hoping that I could give her a response that had even a glimmer of hope left in it. "Bitch!" I growled angrily after hearing the truth. My eyes were instantly covered in blood, my teeth were clenched, and my face became distorted from extreme anger. That roar seemed to vent all the anger in my heart, and the sound exploded in the air, shaking the air around me to the point where it seemed to be trembling slightly. I felt my body trembling uncontrollably as well, my hands clenched tightly into fists, my nails embedded deep into my palms, but I couldn't feel a single ounce of pain because the anger inside me had already consumed all of my senses. "How could you do such a thing? All the trust one had in you was trampled on by you like this." I yelled at her, my voice filled with a mix of disappointment, pain, and anger. My chest rose and fell violently, my breathing was rapid and heavy, and every breath felt like it was burning with rage. "What the hell is the relationship we once had in your eyes? You betrayed me so easily and tried to deceive me with those lies," I said as I pressed forward into her, the anger in my eyes seeming to burn her to the ground. "Do you know how much this hurts me? You've let me down too much." I said these words almost through gritted teeth, the anger in my heart like a raging sea wave, wave after wave hitting my sanity. I couldn't wait to turn around and leave right now, never to see her again, but there was an unwillingness and pain that prevented me from moving my feet right away. I stared hard at her, the look of disgust and determination in my eyes. "I used to think that we could go on forever. I gave so much for you and you repay me in such a way." My voice was already a little hoarse, and my anger made even my throat feel as if it was on fire. At this moment, I was overwhelmed by anger, filled with nothing but resentment towards her and pain for this relationship. Completely incapable of calming down and thinking about anything, I was just immersed in the immense anger brought on by this sudden truth. "I'm sorry, please give me a chance, I really won't dare to do it in the future," she cried out. Her voice was filled with remorse and begging, and tears kept pouring out of her eyes, sliding down her cheeks and dripping onto the ground, as if her broken heart was shedding tears. Her body trembled slightly, and her hands tightly grasped my sleeve as if it was her last straw. "I know I made an unforgivable mistake, I really regret it," she choked, her words carrying deep remorse. "In that moment, I was obsessed and did something to hurt you, but since then I have spent every day in self-reproach and pain." Her eyes were filled with guilt and fear of losing me, fear of facing the consequences of it all. "You are the most important person in my life, I can't live without you," she sobbed uncontrollably. "This time I really know I'm wrong, I'll use all the time in the future to make up for my faults, please believe me this one more time." She raised her head and looked at me with those tear-filled eyes, her eyes filled with longing and pleading, hoping that I could see her sincere repentance. "I will try to win back your trust, I will treat you better and never make the same mistake again." She kept repeating these words, her voice hoarse from crying. Despair and helplessness were written all over her face, as if the world was collapsing at this moment and I was her only hope. She stood there, crying so sadly and miserably, trying to impress me with her tears and confession, so that I would give her a chance to start over. However, I was incredibly angry inside at the moment. "Was it only that one time that day?" I asked angrily. Chapter 8. You've been lying to me. My eyes were still staring at her angrily, my brows locked, the veins on my forehead bulging slightly, my voice low and hoarse due to my anger, as if it was squeezed out from between my teeth. Every word carried a strong flavor of gunpowder, as if the slightest mishap in her answer would ignite the impending outbreak of anger in my heart once again. I stared intently into her eyes, trying to find the answer in her eyes, to find that hint of something that could make me slightly relieved or angrier. "Do you think I'm going to easily believe what you say just this once? Do you take me for a fool?" My hands unconsciously clenched into fists, my body trembling slightly with anger as I tried to restrain my urge to rush up and question her. "We used to love each other so much, I gave you my full trust and you did something like this. Now you tell me it was only once, how can you expect me to trust you?" I said as I took a step forward, closing in on her. My breathing became rapid and heavy, and the anger in my heart was like a burning flame that got hotter and hotter. "You have to realize that one betrayal is already enough to destroy everything between us. Now you say it was only once, was it really only once? How can you guarantee that it won't happen again in the future? What are you going to make me trust you with?" My voice grew louder and louder, my eyes revealing deep disappointment and pain. How I wished that all this was just a nightmare and we could go back to the old days when I woke up, but the reality was so brutally in front of me that I had to face her betrayal and lies. I stood there, angrily waiting for her answer, my mind full of contradictions and struggles. I didn't know how I would face it if she did admit that there were other circumstances. Nor did I know if I could choose to believe her if she insisted that it was only this one time. At this moment, I was enveloped in anger and pain, and was in a deep daze. It really was only once. Her eyes flickered, not daring to look at me. Her voice trembled slightly, with a hint of weakness and uneasiness, her hands unconsciously fiddled with the corners of her coat, and her feet seemed to move a little restlessly. Her head slightly lowered, the original soulful eyes at the moment just panicked to look away, just do not dare to meet my angry gaze. I know you probably won't believe anything I say right now, but it was really just that one time. She added in a small voice, her tone filled with a desperate desire to make me believe, but she was so unconvincing in these displays. It was just an accident, a mistake I regret even now as I think about it. Her lips twitched slightly, as if she was trying to organize words that would be more convincing to me. Every day since then, I blamed myself, terrified that you'd find out. She raised her head, glanced at me quickly, and hurriedly lowered her head again. I really know it's wrong, I've been trying to find a way to make up for it, and I also wanted to bury this matter in the bottom of my heart forever, not wanting it to hurt our relationship, but I didn't expect to accidentally be found out by you. Her voice gradually took on a sobbing tone, tears swirling in her eyes. I don't dare to ask you to forgive me right away, but please believe me, it was really just that one time. I will definitely treat you well in the future, and will prove with my actions that I won't make such a mistake again. She took a small step forward, as if she wanted to get closer to me for a hint of comfort or understanding, but was somewhat afraid to because of my anger. Her eyes revealed deep remorse and fear, remorse for what she had done and fear that she would lose me because of it. She stood there like that, looking so helpless and pitiful, yet her betrayal was like a thorn in my heart. It made it still difficult for me to immediately let go even in the face of her behavior like that, and my heart was still struggling painfully between trust and doubt. You lie, you quickly tell me, in the end how many times? I said angrily. My eyes were round and open, anger seemed to be about to spurt out of my eyes, the veins on my forehead were bulging, and my entire face was red from anger. My voice exploded in the air like thunder, carrying the power of endless anger and questioning. I took a step forward and approached her, my body trembling slightly from anger. I've already given you the chance to come clean and you're still here covering your ass. Do you think I'll believe you so easily when you say it was only once? Your eyes, your behavior, all tell me you're lying. I pointed at her, my fingers all a little white from the force. We used to trust each other so much, and now you're trampling on my trust like this. How long are you going to keep this from me? I yelled, the anger in my heart burning ever more fiercely. How could you do such a thing? Can you stand up to me? I stared at her angrily, my eyes filled with disappointment and pain. Come on, say it. Just how many times? You have to give me the truth today. I almost growled the words, my voice echoing around the room as if I wanted to let out all this anger. I felt like my sanity was on the verge of being completely consumed by my anger at this moment, and those once beautiful images and today's cruel reality kept flashing through my mind, the pain and anger in my heart intertwined, making it impossible for me to calm down. I stood there, waiting for her answer, every second was like an ordeal. I didn't know if her next words would push me deeper into the abyss or give me a moment's respite. But I knew that either way, our relationship had been rocked by this storm and I, for one, had to face the harsh truth. Well, actually, we started a long time ago. She admitted it. Her voice was low with a deep sense of guilt and helplessness, as if it took all her strength to say the words. Her head hung low again, not daring to look me in the eye, as if her soul had been taken out of her body. She looked incredibly forlorn and depressed. I could feel her inner struggle completely collapsing at this moment, and my own heart felt as if it had been struck hard by a heavy hammer, and a sharp pain struck me. How early was a long time ago? Why are you doing this to me? I asked with a trembling voice, forcing back the sharp pain inside me, the anger in my eyes having been replaced by deep hurt. She slightly trembled her lips, and opened her mouth with difficulty. About a few months ago, at that time, I did not know what happened to me, one wrong step, one wrong step. Her voice was getting smaller and smaller, with endless remorse. I really regret it, I know I hurt you, I shouldn't have done it. She raised her head and looked at me with tearful eyes, hoping to find a hint of possibility of forgiveness in my eyes. A few months ago? All this time you've been lying to me? I felt like my voice was becoming strangled with despair and disbelief. Chapter 9 You Don't Blame Me. Every bit of our time together, have you forgotten? How could you do such a thing behind my back? My body took an involuntary step back, as if knocked back by her confession. I live with guilt and pain every day, but I didn't dare to tell you, I was afraid of losing you. She sobbed uncontrollably. I know it's too late to say anything now, but I really hope that you can give me a chance to make amends. I will completely break off relations with him, and be with you properly in the future. She tried to grab my hand, but I shook it off. I stood there dumbfounded, looking at her, with mixed feelings in my heart. Once beautiful memories in this moment as a sharp knife, stabbing my heart. I don't know how to face this cruel fact, and I don't know whether our feelings can still be salvaged. Anger, pain, disappointment, confusion and other various emotions intertwined, putting me in a deep predicament. It was as if I was in a dark bottomless pit, unable to find an exit or see a ray of hope. You don't blame me, because you work as a driver for your boss and often stay out at night. I am lonely at home alone, so She defended. There was a hint of aggression and helplessness in her eyes, and her voice was raised a bit, as if she wanted to find a reasonable explanation for her behavior. Think about it, you're not at home every night. I'm facing an empty house all by myself. Can you appreciate that kind of loneliness? She frowned, a hint of tears flashing in her eyes. I don't want to be like this, but I'm really lonely, and many times I feel like I've been forgotten by you. Her hands unconsciously clenched and her body leaned forward slightly, trying to make me understand how she felt. Every time I call you, you say that you are busy working and don't have time to talk to me. I also know that you work hard and are working hard for our lives, but I need your company too. Her voice choked a little. In those days when you weren't there, the emptiness in my heart grew bigger and bigger before I got confused and made such a mistake. She lowered her head, not daring to look me in the eyes again, as if she was also ashamed of her behavior. I know that this doesn't excuse me from making a mistake, but I really hope that you can understand my situation. I didn't mean to hurt you, I just lost my mind in that lonely state. She raised her head and looked at me with pleading eyes. Can we work together to figure out a way to get our lives back on track, and for you to spend more time with me, and for us to start over, please? Her words were full of remorse for the past and anticipation for the future, hoping that while I was angry, I could also consider her feelings and give our relationship a chance to repair. However, this defense of hers made me even angrier inside. On the one hand I could understand her loneliness, on the other hand it was hard to let go of her betrayal so easily. I fell into a deep anger and collapse. You mean you're blaming me now? It's my fault. I looked at her incredulously. My eyes were wide with shock and anger, as if I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stared at her, my face flushed with excitement, my eyebrows locked together. I work hard every day for this family, for our life, working as a driver for my boss, running around day and night, and you're actually saying it's my fault? I raised my volume, a tremor in my voice, the anger in my heart growing. I work hard to earn money outside, undergoing all kinds of pressure, just so that we can have a better life, and you do this kind of thing at home, and now you want to put the blame on me? I said while pointing my finger at myself. My emotions had gotten a little out of control. You feel lonely, is that your reason for betraying me? What about me? How much of my hard work and exhaustion out there have you understood? I took a step forward and pressed closer to her. I've given so much to this family and all I get in return is your betrayal and accusations? How can you be so selfish and irresponsible? I gasped for air, anger and aggression intertwined in my heart. I never thought that you would use such a reason to excuse yourself. The mistake you made is unforgivable, and now you want to blame the fault on me staying out at night. You simply disappoint me too much. I shook my head and looked at her with disappointment and pain in my eyes. I stood there for a long time, unable to calm down inside, feeling incredibly angry and incredulous at her behavior. Just forgive me, all saints make mistakes, this is not a big deal for me, why are you holding on to it? She exclaimed. There was a hint of dissatisfaction and eagerness on her face, her brows furrowed and her eyes looked straight at me, as if she was puzzled by my unforgiveness. Her hands were crossed at her waist, and her body was leaning forward slightly, as if she wanted to use this stance to enhance the strength of her words. Look, who in this world can guarantee that they will never make a mistake in their life? All saints make mistakes, I made this one mistake, are you going to keep biting at it like this? Her volume was raised again, and there was a bit of justification in her tone. I admit that I did wrong, but I have also recognized the mistake. What else do you want from me? A hint of annoyance flashed in her eyes, as if she felt that I was overreacting to this matter. I have said that I will break off my relationship with him and live a good life with you in the future. Why can't you be a little more generous and have to make this matter so stagnant? She said while waving her arms. This is not a big thing that the sky is falling. days still have to go on. You always hold on to this mistake. How can we live in the future? Her cheeks were slightly reddened from excitement, and her breathing became rapid. You also think about the good times we once had, just because of this one mistake, you want to deny all our feelings? Her voice softened slightly, with a hint of pleading. I know I hurt you, but can't you give me a chance to make amends? It won't do either of us any good if you keep on not forgiving me like this. She looked at me with anticipation in her eyes, hoping that I could let go of the stigma in my heart and forgive her for her transgressions under these words of hers. However, these words of hers made me even angrier in my heart. She didn't seem to truly understand how deep the hurt her behavior had brought to me, and was only bent on wanting me to easily forgive her. Chapter 10. You get the hell out of here. You psycho, you get the hell out of here. I roared in anger. My eyes were as white as bronze bells, my eyes were covered in blood, and my face became twisted and hideous due to my extreme anger. That roar seemed to have erupted from the depths of my heart, carrying endless anger, disappointment, and pain. The sound was like thunder, echoing throughout the space, seemingly toppling the roof of the room. I felt my body trembling from this intense emotion, my hands clenched into fists, my knuckles whitening from the exertion, and the veins on my arms bulging out at the roots. I've given so much for you, worked so hard for this family desperately, and you do something like this, and now you're still so justified. Do you have a heart or not? I growled loudly at her. Every word was like a sharp arrow with flames, shooting straight at her. The mistake you made is unforgivable, and you're saying it's not a big deal? What do you think of our relationship? What do you take me for? My voice was already a little hoarse, but my anger hadn't diminished at all. I used to trust you so much, treating you as the most important person in my life, and you trampled on my trust like this. How can you let me face you again? I said as I took a step forward, as if I wanted to vent all the anger in my heart on her, but restrained myself at the last moment. Scram! I don't want to see you again, seeing you makes me feel sick. I shouted with all my strength, my voice filled with determination. My chest rose and fell violently, my breathing was rapid and heavy, the anger in my heart was like a raging sea wave, wave after wave hitting my sanity. I stood there, staring angrily at her, the anger in my eyes seeming to burn her out. At this moment, I was already overwhelmed by anger, filled with nothing but loathing for her and a strong desire to have her disappear from my sight immediately. I could no longer think calmly about anything, but was immersed in this uncontrollable anger, as if the whole world had collapsed at this moment. Just at this moment, my boss called and asked me to come to his house. The ringing of my cell phone rang abruptly, which seemed particularly harsh in this atmosphere of saber rattling. I glanced at the caller ID and felt a pang of annoyance in my heart, but I was forced to pick up the phone. Hello, boss. My voice carried a hint of suppressed anger and helplessness. You come to my house right now, there's something I need you to take care of. The boss's voice came from the other end of the phone, with the usual commanding tone in his voice. Okay, boss, I'll be right over. I held back the emotions in my heart and tried to make my voice sound calm. Hanging up the phone, I glared at her fiercely. Don't look for me in the future, we're over. I snarled at her, turned around and ran away. I don't want to stay in this place full of pain and quarrels for one more second. At this moment I just want to run away from here as soon as possible, run away from the harm she brought to me. My footsteps flew as if something terrible was chasing me behind. My heart was still beating violently from the argument I had just had, a mix of anger, disappointment, and pain that left me almost breathless. As I ran, I thought about all the things that used to be between us, all those beautiful memories that were now shattered and broken, like mirrors that had been slammed down hard on the ground. And her betrayal and her defense just now was even more like a knife, piercing my heart deeply. I don't understand why things have turned out like this. I have paid so much for this family, worked hard, but in exchange for such a result. Running to the street, I waved and stopped a cab. Sitting in the car, I leaned on the back of the seat, breathing heavily, my mind a mess. I do not know how to face the next life, and her feelings seem to have come to an end, but there is still a trace of reluctance and unwillingness in my heart. But I know that once something happens, there is no going back to the past. I looked out the car window at the passing street scene, my heart filled with confusion and helplessness. I can only let the cab take me to the boss's house. Temporarily escaping from this place that broke my heart to face the unknown work tasks, while the changes in my life made me feel exhausted and confused like never before. Soon, I was inside my boss's house. All the way there my emotions were extremely complicated. The argument I just had with my ex-girlfriend was still reeling in my mind, a mix of anger and pain that put me in a bit of a trance. But when I stood in front of my boss's house, I took a deep breath and tried to adjust my emotions before I rang the doorbell. The owner quickly opened the door, a small smile on his face, but his eyes revealed some urgency. He welcomed me into the house, which was somewhat dimly lit, and the atmosphere seemed a bit depressing. We walked into the living room, and the boss pulled me to sit on the sofa, then came close to me and started to whisper something to me. His voice was very low, but his tone was very sincere. I know you've been working very hard lately, and it's been very hard, and there's a matter on my side that I really need your help. He paused and looked at me. He frowned slightly, his eyes revealing a hint of anticipation. I thought about it and felt that you are the most suitable person. I will give you enough compensation and support, as long as you can get this thing done. I quietly listened to my boss's words, with some hesitation in my heart. On the one hand, I had just gone through an emotional trauma, and my mood had not yet calmed down, so I really didn't have much energy to deal with other things. On the other hand, the conditions offered by the boss made me a bit tempted, and since he had been treating me pretty well, this favor didn't seem too good for me to refuse. I was silent for a moment, pondering the pros and cons. The boss spoke, quietly whispering in my ear what he needed me to do. What? I was surprised to hear that. I looked at the boss's wife who was cooking in the kitchen, and this matter was related to the boss's wife. How about that? You have to promise me. The boss looked at me and said. Okay, I promise you. I looked at the beautiful figure of the boss's wife, I swallowed my saliva and agreed. Happy cooperation. To finish this off, you'll be living in my house from now on. The boss happily patted my shoulder. The boss's wife quickly made the meal. Then, the three of us ate together. The meal was finished quickly and the boss was satisfied. He leaned back in his chair, a faint smile on his face, his eyes revealing a happy emotion. Perhaps it was because seeing me and the boss's wife interacting at the dinner table made him feel that his plan was going in the desired direction, or perhaps it was because of some other unknown reason. The boss's wife got up and prepared to go wash the dishes. Her movements were graceful and natural, as if this was something she took for granted. She owed her body slightly and began to clear the dishes on the table. Her long hair gently slid down, covering half of her face and adding a bit of gentleness. The boss immediately said to me, "You go help her. Close the distance." The boss's voice was low and strong, carrying an undeniable tone. His eyes were fixed on me, as if he was conveying some kind of important message. I froze slightly, and a wave of complex emotions surged in my heart. On the one hand, I felt somewhat helpless and resistant to my boss's orders. On the other hand, I couldn't resist the trace of admiration for my boss's wife that I felt deep inside. I hesitated for a moment, then slowly stood up and walked towards the boss's wife. I knew that from this moment onwards, I would be in a much more complicated and dangerous situation, but it seemed that I had no way back. Of course, I was still very happy inside. The thought of being able to be alone with Boss Lady caused an uncontrollable joy to well up in my heart. The gentle and beautiful appearance of the boss's wife once again surfaced in my mind, her knitted brows and smile all seemed to have a magical power, making me involuntarily mesmerized. Who wouldn't want to be alone with such a charming woman? She was like a dazzling light that illuminated everything around her. Around her, it was as if I could feel a serenity and warmth, a wonderful feeling that could not be described in words. I looked forward to being alone with her, to being able to appreciate her beauty and feel her gentleness more closely. Perhaps, in the process, I would also have the opportunity to learn more about her side and discover those unknown charms of hers. This anticipation made my heart beat faster involuntarily, and an excited smile appeared on my face. When the boss's wife saw me helping her with the dishes, she shook her head gently. The boss's wife's movements were gentle and elegant, her long, silky hair swayed slightly as she moved, emitting a faint fragrance. Her eyes carried gentleness and concern, just like the breeze on a spring day, making people feel incredibly comfortable. "Lin Fan, go rest, just let me do it." The boss's wife's voice was like a clear spring in the mountains, crisp and pleasant. Her words were filled with thoughtfulness and kindness, making it impossible to refuse. She slightly raised the corners of her mouth, revealing a faint smile that was as beautiful and moving as a blooming flower. Her eyes revealed a kind of determination, as if telling me that she didn't need my help, and that she could finish these chores on her own. As I stood there, looking at the boss's wife, an inexplicable feeling of emotion welled up in my heart. I knew that the boss's wife was a hardworking and kind woman who always quietly gave to others and never asked for anything in return. I wanted to insist on helping, but looking at the boss's wife's firm eyes, I couldn't bear to go against her wishes. So, I nodded slightly and said softly, "All right then, boss lady, if you need anything, call me anytime." After saying that, I turned around and left the kitchen, but my heart was always attached to the boss's wife. I know that this gentle and kind woman has left a deep mark in my heart. Why did you come out? Hurry in and help. When the boss saw that I didn't help the boss's wife wash the dishes, he glared at me angrily. Chapter 11. Then you come over. I stood in the kitchen doorway. I shifted back and forth between the boss and the boss's wife. My heart was full of entanglements. At this moment, I was really a bit of a dilemma. The boss looked at me firmly, eyes full of urging. He insisted that I help the boss's wife wash the dishes. His tone of voice with a hint of urgency. As if this thing must be me? He told me the importance of the matter and his expectations of me. Let me feel very stressed. The boss's wife, on the other hand, was determined not to let me help. The boss was adamant. I was in a deep conflict, not knowing who to listen to. On the one hand, the boss's insistence makes me feel responsible to help him. After all, he usually treats me well, and I have promised him. On the other hand, the boss's wife did not allow me to help. I have no reason to force to help. My heart is like being pulled by two forces. Left and right are difficult. What are you waiting for? Try to get closer to her. Boss voice with a hint of eagerness and expectation. His eyes locked me, as if conveying an invisible power to me. At that moment, my heartbeat inexplicably skipped a beat. An indescribable feeling spread in the bottom of the heart. The boss looked at my dumbfounded look. Seemed a little helpless and a little hateful. He slightly frowned. Eyes flashed a trace of imperceptible irritation. He gently reached out his hand. The warm palm gently pushed on my back. The force is not big, but let me involuntarily step forward. Before I had time to react, I was already pushed into the kitchen by my boss. Kitchen door and my back gently closed. Issued a slight sound. I stood in the kitchen, heart beating like a drum. Even I do not dare to look up to see the boss's wife. In this small kitchen, I seem to be able to feel the boss lady's breath lingering around. My thoughts have become a little confused. Don't know how to face the next with her to get alone. But at the same time, my heart also welled up a trace of expectation. Expecting in this special space can happen some different stories. The boss's wife saw me back to the kitchen. Her beautiful eyes flashed a trace of surprise. The whole person also froze for a moment. Her gelatinous skin emitted a charming luster under the soft light of the kitchen. And her slightly open red lips seemed to carry endless temptation. Lin Fan, why are you back again? The boss lady's voice is as clear and pleasant as a yellow warbler, with a hint of anger in that tone, but also seems to have a different kind of tenderness. Her eyes locked me, as if to find the answer from my face. That gaze seems to have an unspeakable sentiment in the flow. Let my heartbeat involuntarily accelerated a few points. I looked at the boss lady, that absolutely beautiful face. A moment actually a little lost in thought. Her beauty is like a blooming flower. Let a person cannot help but want to get close to, but afraid of desecrating this beautiful. I tried to calm my inner waves, trying to answer her question in a calm tone. But there was still a trace of imperceptible trembling in my voice. Boss lady, boss he let me come back, said. But he said that he let me help you wash the dishes, don't let you work so hard. I stammered. But my eyes didn't dare to meet the boss's wife's eyes, fearing that she would see through my inner panic. When the boss lady heard my words, a faint blush appeared on her cheeks. That shy look is even more exciting. All right, then you come over. The boss lady nodded slightly. The ink-like hair with her movement swayed gently, as if telling some kind of tender sentiment. Her eyes flickered with a complex light, seeming to have expectations, but also seemed to have hesitation. Her voice is like a gentle breeze. Brushed my ears. Let my heart involuntarily ripples. I looked at her in a daze. And for a while I was a little lost in thought. Her beauty in this small kitchen seems to emit a unique light. So I cannot help but want to get closer. I slowly moved my feet. Each step seemed to carry a kind of inexplicable tension and expectation. When I was close to her, I could feel the faint fragrance emanating from her body. That is a kind of intoxicating flavor. She slightly raised her eyes. The moment her eyes met mine, time seemed to stand still. In this quiet kitchen, the atmosphere between us became more and more ambiguous. That if there is no sentiment in the air permeated, as if at any time may bloom brilliant sparks. The boss lady turned her head back. The head of silky hair gently swinging, like a black waterfall, like smooth and silky. Her eyes focused on the dishes in front of her. Long eyelashes fluttering slightly, like a butterfly gently flapping wings. She was slightly bent over. Curvy. That graceful figure in the soft light of the kitchen looks particularly charming. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my inner tension and throbbing. Slowly walk over. Each step seems to carry a kind of unspeakable expectation. My eyes couldn't help but fall on the boss's wife, whose beauty made my heart beat faster. As I approached her, the air was filled with an ambiguous atmosphere. I reached out my hand, ready to help, with the eagerness to share her burden, with the nervousness of this intimate contact. At that moment, my hand accidentally touched the boss's fingers. At that moment, as if there is an electric current from the fingertips spread all over the body. Both of us as if electrocuted. Body jolted. The boss lady's cheeks instantly colored a touch of moving blush. That shy look like a blooming peach blossom, as delicate as the colorful. Her eyes flashed a trace of panic, but with an inexplicable tenderness. My heart is also in this moment crazy beating. That electric feeling makes me feel like in a dream world. We just quietly stared at each other. Time seemed to stop flowing at this moment. Everything around us became blurred. Only the existence of each other clear and deep. At that moment, the ambiguous atmosphere between us more and more dense. As if a beautiful dream. Let a person intoxicated do not want to wake up. The boss lady panicked and lowered her head. The jade-like neck slightly bent, showing a touch of shy arc. Her hands unconsciously tightly gripped the dishcloth. Seems to want to use this to hide the inner panic. Her long hair, like a waterfall down to the shoulders, slightly covered her scarlet cheeks. But the faint blush is even more exciting. I stood aside, staring at the boss's wife. When I saw the boss's wife blushing, my heartbeat also involuntarily accelerated. That a touch of delicate red like the evening sky. Gorgeous and charming. Her shyness was like a flower blooming in spring, exuding a gentle and sweet flavor. My eyes were filled with amazement and tenderness, as if I was deeply attracted by the beauty of the boss's wife. I want to say something to ease this awkward and ambiguous atmosphere, but found my throat as if something blocked the general. Not a word can be said. Chapter 12: The Kitchen Ambiguity. We just stood there in silence. There was an indescribable ambiguity and tension in the air. Finally, the silent kitchen seemed to be wrapped in a layer of ambiguous and tense atmosphere. I feel my cheeks are also slightly hot. In order to break this situation that makes people a little confused, I dry cough. The sound in the quiet space seems a bit abrupt, but also like a small stone thrown into the surface of the lake, breaking the original calm. I tried to focus my eyes, pretending to wash the dishes. I lowered my head, looked at the dishes in the sink, picked up a bowl mechanically with both hands, and gently wiped it with a dishcloth. However, my mind is not on washing dishes. My mind constantly floats back to the moment of electric shock and the boss's wife's shy and touching appearance. The boss's wife also awkwardly went to the side to wipe the stove. Her movements were a bit flustered. The rag in her hand moved irregularly on the stovetop. She slightly lowered her eyes. Long eyelashes cast a shadow under her eyelids. The scarlet cheeks have not faded. Her lips were pursed gently, as if she was trying to suppress her inner emotions. The kitchen is not a large space, but at this moment, it seems to be separated by an invisible gap. Each of us was busy, but we could clearly feel each other's presence. The ambiguous atmosphere is still floating in the air, as if telling an unspeakable story. At this time, the air in the kitchen seems to be frozen in general, so quiet that you can only hear the sound of water flow and the sound of light breathing. I focused on the dishes in my hands, turned around and prepared to carefully place the washed dishes on a shelf. However, the moment I turned around, A sudden touch came from behind me. I felt that my buttocks had accidentally bumped into the boss's wife. At that instant, my body froze like an electric shock. My heartbeat suddenly accelerated. An indescribable feeling of nervousness instantly surged to my heart. I could clearly feel the soft body of the boss's wife, and I gently touched the moment. The warmth of the touch as if branded on my skin. The boss's wife was obviously also startled by this unexpected collision. She softly let out a gasp, with a hint of surprise and shyness in her voice. Her body trembled slightly. Her already red cheeks were as colorful as ripe apples. Her eyes flashed a trace of panic. The beautiful eyes seemed to hide endless shyness and tenderness. I stood in place awkwardly. Do not know what to do. My brain is blank. Completely lost the ability to think. I want to say something to ease this embarrassing situation, but found myself as if my throat was blocked by something. Not a word can be said. We just stood in silence. Time seemed to stop flowing at this moment. Everything around us became blurred. Only the existence of each other is clear and deep. The ambiguous atmosphere between us became more and more dense. As if a beautiful dream that cannot be escaped. I can only pretend not to know what happened. Trying to keep my expression calm. As if the accidental collision had never happened. My hands gripped the dishcloth tightly, mechanically wiping on the dishes. But my mind was not on the dishes. My heart was like the surface of a lake swept by a gale. The waves were turbulent. Nervousness and embarrassment were intertwined. I did not know what to do. I tried to avoid meeting the boss's wife. Just staring at the dishes in my hands. As if they were the most important things in the world. I can feel my cheeks are still slightly hot. Heartbeat is also still beating rapidly. I secretly prayed in my heart. Hope that the boss's wife will not bring up the matter just now. Let this embarrassing atmosphere as soon as possible to dissipate. The boss's wife did not say anything. She quietly stood aside. The silence as a heavy dark clouds over us. Her eyes were a little wandering. Also seems to be trying to avoid this embarrassing situation. Her hands unconsciously fiddled with the rag. The originally elegant movements now seem a bit flustered. Her beautiful face still has a faint blush. That is the residue of shyness and embarrassment. Both of them were silent. The air in the kitchen seemed to freeze. Only the sound of the water flow and the slight sound of breathing echoed in the silence. As if telling the unspeakable feelings between us. This kind of silence is depressing. But also with a kind of inexplicable ambiguity. We seem to be waiting for something. Waiting for an opportunity to break the deadlock. But no one knows when this opportunity will come. Finally. In the long and full of ambiguous atmosphere. The last bowl was also washed clean. At that moment, I felt relieved. As if I had completed a difficult task. However, at the same time, a complex emotion welled up in my heart. I looked at the neatly stacked dishes. There was a sense of relief after completing the task. But also a little reluctant to give up. This feeling of reluctance is like a fine silk thread. Tightly wound around my heart. I would like to stay with the boss's wife for a little while longer. Even if it is just to stand quietly beside her. And feel her breath. That is also a kind of unspeakable happiness. Her knitted brows. Her gentle shyness. Are like bright stars. In my heart shining light. However. I cannot help. Reason tells me that. Can't let my emotions overflow. I can't let this ambiguous atmosphere continue to spread. Can't let myself fall into the situation that can't be extricated. I know. There are too many boundaries and constraints between us. Cannot easily cross. I can only silently bury this emotion in the bottom of the heart. With reason to restrain their own impulses. I took a deep breath. And tried to calm myself down. I slowly straightened up. Swept my eyes around the kitchen. As if I wanted to deeply engrave the memory of this moment in my mind. Then, I gently bit my lip. Plucked up the courage to look at the boss's wife. She was still beautiful. And her shyness made me feel sorry for her. I want to say something. But do not know where to start. In the end, I just nodded slightly. turned around, and silently left the kitchen. At the moment of leaving, my heart was filled with loss and helplessness. I don't know what the future will be. Don't know whether this ambiguous emotion will have a result. But I know the memory of this moment will always remain in my heart. Become a piece of my life, unforgettable, beautiful memories. After I left the kitchen, the boss lady also gently followed me out. Her footsteps were very light, as if she was afraid of disturbing the delicate atmosphere. Her hair fluttered slightly. That soft curve in the air drew an elegant arc. Her face still has a faint blush. That shy look like a flower in full bloom in spring, delicate and colorful. She slightly lowered her eyes. Long eyelashes cast a shadow under her eyelids. The beautiful eyes flashed with complex light. Perhaps because of those ambiguous moments just now. Her heart was also filled with tension and shyness. Her hands unconsciously clasped together. Seems to be trying to find a sense of security. The boss on the sofa saw the two of us. Eyes flashed a trace of color. The eyes seemed to contain many indescribable emotions. There is surprise. There is expectation. There is also a hint of imperceptible cunning. The corner of his mouth rose slightly, showing a satisfied smile. Chapter 13. The boss's wife peels the apples. It was as if he had already anticipated this scene. Or maybe he had been expecting it all along. The boss's eyes darted back and forth between the two of us. As if they were scrutinizing something. As if they were hinting at something. He gently nodded. The action is small, but seems to have a kind of invisible power. In this moment, the whole space was covered by an ambiguous and mysterious atmosphere. The three of us seemed to be caught in a whirlpool of unspeakable emotions. Everyone's heart has its own thoughts and feelings. Come and sit down, have some fruit. The boss's face is filled with a warm smile. That smile is like warm sunshine. Let me feel a hint of relaxation in this somewhat delicate atmosphere. He smiled at me and waved. Eyes full of expectation and some kind of unspeakable deep meaning. The boss smiled. And deliberately sat in. As if by design. His movements were natural and smooth. But with a deliberate arrangement. He gave up the seat next to me to sit next to him. At that moment, my heart surged with a complex emotion. Both nervous, but also a trace of inexplicable expectation. When I slowly sat down, the boss turned his attention to the boss's wife. His eyes with a hint of gentle urging. Let the boss lady sit on my left. The boss's wife was slightly stunned. The blush on her cheeks seemed to deepen a few more points. Her eyes flashed a hint of hesitation. But under the boss's gaze, still gently walked over. Sat on my left. At this point, the position of the three of us formed a subtle pattern. I sat next to the boss. Can clearly feel the aura emanating from his body? That is both a kind of majesty and with the affinity of the breath. And the boss's wife sat on my left. Her presence is like a gentle breeze. Let a person involuntarily want to get close to. The air was filled with an ambiguous and tense atmosphere. The three of us sat quietly, as if waiting for something to happen. The plate of fruit in front of us. Bright colors in the light looks particularly attractive. But I do not have the heart to taste. My mind was occupied by this special atmosphere, filled with all sorts of complicated emotions and thoughts. Peel an apple for Lin Fan. The boss's voice slowly sounded, like the slight ripples on a calm lake, spreading out in this space filled with ambiguity. His eyes gently but firmly fell on the boss's wife, with a hint of expectation in his eyes, as if promoting a quietly unfolding story. The boss's wife heard the boss's words. First slightly stunned. That momentary pause, like a delicate brushstroke in a beautiful painting, adding a few touching charm. Then, she nodded tenderly. Agreed. The nodding motion is gentle and elegant, as if the flowers gently swing in the spring breeze. Each subtle movement with endless tenderness. Her beautiful eyes flashed a trace of shyness. That shyness is like the dewdrops on the petals in the morning. Crystal clear and lovable. In that shyness, but also has a kind of unspeakable obedience. As if she is willing to, in this delicate moment, listen to the boss's arrangements. For this ambiguous situation to add a touch of color, the boss's wife stretched out her slender fingers, which are carved like white jade, long and beautiful. She picked up a red apple, the apple in her hands as if into a precious work of art. The color of the apple is bright and colorful, and the boss lady's white fingers reflect each other, forming a beautiful picture. She picked up the fruit knife, the body of the knife and the light glittering faintly. The boss lady carefully began to peel the skin. Her movements are extremely concentrated, as if the world in this moment only left in her hands the apple and the fruit knife. Her eyes are fixed on the apple. Each cut is extremely detailed. The concentrated look cannot help but be moved. Her long hair hangs down slightly, fluttering gently on her cheeks, adding a bit of tenderness to her. The sound of peeling apples is particularly clear in the quiet space, as if it were a soft melody, playing an ambiguous and cozy music. I originally wanted to peel it myself, but the boss's eyes stopped me. The boss's gaze was like an invisible barrier, instantly stopping my hand in midair. He slightly narrowed his eyes. Eyes reveal a kind of unquestionable firmness. That gaze seems to have a strong power. Let me cannot resist. I stared at the boss in a daze. A complex emotion welled up in my heart. And the boss slightly sidestepped, whispered in my ear, "You now have to get used to her serving you, so that you can draw closer, you have the opportunity to take her." His voice is low and magnetic. Every word is like a heavy hammer on my heart. I just feel a burst of heat inside. Heartbeat also involuntarily accelerated a few points. The boss's words are full of hints and encouragement. Let me both feel nervous and full of expectations. I secretly glanced at the boss's wife. She is focusing on peeling apples. The beautiful side of the face in the light looks particularly moving. My heart surged with an inexplicable impulse, wanting to get closer to her, to learn more about her. But at the same time, I also feel a deep uneasiness. I do not know if I really have the courage to pursue this ambiguous feelings. Soon, the boss lady peeled the apple. Her movements are elegant and skillful, the long fingers flexibly turning the fruit knife. Peeling the apple skin as thin as a cicada's wing. With the last knife down, a round and smooth apple appeared in front of us. The boss lady gently blew on the apple a little bit of the remaining peel debris. The gentle look as if caring for a precious treasure. She slightly raised her head, eyes with a hint of shyness and tenderness, handed me the apple. I looked at the boss's wife, handed over the apple. Heart surged with an indescribable excitement. My hand trembled a little and reached out, slowly took the apple. At that moment, it was as if time had stood still. As I held the apple, the surface of the apple was still warm from the owner's hand. I could smell the residual scent of the boss's wife on the apple. It was a light, fresh aroma, like the fragrance of flowers blooming in spring. This fragrance lingered on the tip of my nose, intoxicated me. I almost closed my eyes. Couldn't help but inhale deeply, trying to keep this scent in my memory forever. The fragrance on the apple seems to be not only a material scent, but also a symbol of the boss's wife's tenderness and beauty. It made me feel the presence of the boss's wife, as if she was by my side, surrounding me with her tenderness and care. Chapter 14. I went upstairs to take a bath. I ate an apple peeled by the boss's wife. A mouthful of it. The sweetness of the apple spread in my mouth. The delicate taste seemed to carry endless tenderness. The juice of the apple flows on the tip of the tongue. Let my taste buds immersed in this wonderful flavor. I savored every bite of the apple, feeling the unique sweetness and warmth. My heart was warm, as if there was a stream of warmth slowly flowing through my body, dispelling all the fatigue and uneasiness. The boss saw me interacting with the boss's wife. He was very satisfied. His face was filled with a pleased smile, as warm and bright as the spring sunshine. His eyes were full of expectation and encouragement, as if he was pleased with the subtle atmosphere between us. He raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing his white teeth. a smile that carried a sense of confidence and ease. I'm going upstairs to take a shower, so you guys can talk for a while. The boss's words are like a gentle breeze. In this ambiguous atmosphere, gently brushed. His voice is calm and gentle, with a reassuring power. After saying this, the boss slowly stood up. His movements elegant and calm, as if everything is under his control. He gently patted me on the shoulder, a gesture full of encouragement and expectation. Then, he turned toward the stairs. Footsteps in the quiet space faded away, leaving me and the boss's wife. In this ambiguous and expectant atmosphere, staring at each other, heart filled with a variety of complex emotions and thoughts. As soon as the boss left, the whole space seemed to be instantly enveloped by a subtle silence. Just now there was a hint of the boss in the lively atmosphere. This moment is like the wind blowing smoke, dissipated without a trace. I sat there, still holding an apple peeled by the boss's wife, but suddenly felt a bit lost. My eyes unconsciously drifted to the boss's wife, and then panicked away at the moment I was about to meet her eyes. The boss's wife also looked a bit uneasy. She slightly lowered her eyes. Long eyelashes cast a shadow under her eyelids. Her hands gently placed on her knees, fingers unconsciously twisting. Seems to be trying to find a topic to break this awkward situation. However, at this moment we seem to be bound by an invisible force. No one knows how to start. The air is filled with an awkward atmosphere, making people feel depressed. The original warm light at this moment also seems to become a little blinding, shining our embarrassment nothing to hide. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Every second became incredibly long. We just sit quietly. The distance between each other is obviously very close, but seems to be separated by a gap that cannot be crossed. Lin Fan, do you have a girlfriend? Just at this time, the gentle and pleasant voice of the boss's wife suddenly sounded, like a stone that breaks the surface of a calm lake, instantly breaking this suffocating silence. The boss lady's eyes slightly raised, with a hint of curiosity and expectation, staring at me tightly. Her cheeks still have a faint blush. That shy look people cannot help but feel pity. Her lips slightly open. The few simple words from her mouth, but as if with a kind of magic, let my heartbeat involuntarily accelerated speed. In this instant, the entire space seemed to be lit up by this sudden question. The original awkward atmosphere was also washed away by this question, replaced by a subtle tension and anticipation. I looked at the boss's wife in a daze. A complex emotion welled up in my heart. Her question made me feel both pained and at a loss for words. I tried to calm myself down, thinking about how to answer this question. No, I answered honestly. My voice was small, with a calmness that I tried to suppress. The moment I said this answer, an inexplicable emotion welled up in my heart. Perhaps because in front of the boss's wife, I don't want to have any concealment. Or perhaps this question made me recall those painful pasts of my own. My eyes slightly lowered. Not dare to meet the boss lady's eyes, as if afraid that she from my eyes to see my pain and unnatural. Have you ever talked about it? The boss's wife continued to ask. Her voice was still gentle, but with a hint of curiosity and inquiry. The boss's wife tilted her head slightly, with an expectant glint in her beautiful eyes. Her hair fluttered gently in the light, adding to her charm. Her question was like a hook, tightly grasping my heart, making me unable to escape. I nodded gravely. I'd been in a relationship, but it was over. My movements were a little stiff, as if this simple gesture took a lot of my strength. My cheeks are slightly hot. My heart is full of embarrassment and pain. I remembered my ex-girlfriend who was with the old man next door. I met her after graduation, and we were together in 3 days. Before that, I hadn't talked about it. I was pretty much an emotional blank. I never thought I would be asked such a question by my boss's wife in such a situation. For a while, I didn't know how to respond. My mind was in chaos. All kinds of thoughts intertwined. Let me feel a little overwhelmed. As a college student from the countryside, I often feel as if I were a small grass growing hard in the busy world. I come from the land of simplicity, where there are endless fields, staggered farmhouses, and hardworking, kind-hearted folks. From the countryside to the university, this full of hope and challenge of the temple, I carry too many expectations and dreams. However, the reality often makes me feel helpless and heavy. I even tuition, living expenses, or loans. Every expense is like a heavy mountain in my heart. In order to be able to successfully complete the study, I have to be careful to live. Every penny has to be spent on the knife edge. In this case, where is the extra money to fall in love? When I was in school, I also met girls who made my heart sing. They either have a bright smile, or have gentle eyes, or have a unique temperament. Whenever I see their figure, my heart will surge a wave of inexplicable joy and excitement. However, when this joy and excitement replaced by a deep inferiority complex and helplessness because of the poor, I do not dare to pursue them. I am afraid that I cannot bring them happiness. Afraid of their own poverty will become their burden. I can only silently watch them walk past me, heart full of regret and loss. In those lonely days, I often think of my hometown. Think of those parents who work hard in the fields. They have paid too much sweat and blood for my studies. I can't let them down. So, I can only bury my feelings deep in the bottom of my heart. Study hard. Hope that one day can change their fate. Let themselves and their families live a happy life. At this moment, boss lady asked me this way. I do a little pain and embarrassment. Chapter 15. Do you have a girlfriend? Although I am a meter 8 or so, in the crowd is always that kind of upright outstanding. My posture is like a proudly standing poplar. Wherever I go, seems to come with a unique aura. Tall figure, make me and the many people especially eye-catching. Whenever I walk through the campus, can attract the attention of many girls. I not only have an enviable height, also have a long time to exercise and get the abs. The tight muscle lines inadvertently revealed my self-discipline and perseverance. Whenever I wear close-fitting clothes, the hidden abs can always attract a lot of girls' eyes. That is my sweat and hard work for the pride. Is my body of a kind of control and sculpture. I am tall and handsome. My face is like a carefully carved work of art. My features are well defined. My deep eyes seem to hide endless stories. My nose is as strong as a mountain peak. My lips are always slightly upturned and I have a warm smile. My hair is black and thick, fluttering gently in the breeze, adding a bit of dashing temperament for me. Whether in the classroom, library, or in the corners of the campus, I can always be the center of attention. There are a lot of girls to me. They are either shyly handed a love letter, or bravely face to say their hearts. Some of these girls are gentle and lovely. Some are lively and cheerful. Some are elegant and generous. Their eyes are sparkling with appreciation and love for me. However, I never agreed. Not because I don't know how to cherish, nor because I am high and mighty, but because I am really too poor. My poverty is like an unbridgeable gap between me and those beautiful feelings. I am afraid that I cannot bring them happiness. Afraid of their own embarrassment will let them down. I can only helplessly reject those sincere confessions. Close their hearts tightly. Alone to bear the loneliness and helplessness. Only my ex-girlfriend after graduation let me feel what is called pain. She was actually with the old man next door, so I was very hurt. Luckily, we have already broken up. Except for my ex-girlfriend, I really haven't talked about it. The boss's wife tilted her head and looked at me. That looked like a curious child. Her slightly sideways face in the soft light looks particularly moving. A few strands of hair gently falling on the cheeks, for her to add a little charm. Her eyes with a hint of doubt and puzzlement, as if examining an incredible mystery. You are so handsome, and your body is so good, you will definitely meet a better one in the future. The boss lady's voice was soft and gentle, as pleasant as gurgling water. Her words were full of surprise and questions. The slightly rising tone revealed her inner curiosity and inquiry. Her eyes were fixed on me, as if she wanted to find the answer from my expression. Her eyes wandered over my handsome face, as if she were admiring a beautiful painting. Her eyes fell on my body again, as if imagining the vigor and charm contained in my good physical condition. The boss's words were like a stone thrown into a calm lake, creating ripples in my heart, making me feel a little embarrassed. "Boss lady, thank you, I don't think I'll be able to meet you again," I said seriously. My tone was firm and sincere. Every word seemed to carry weight, falling heavily in the air. My eyes are incomparably clear, like two bays of tranquil lake water, without a trace of impurity. I looked straight at the boss's wife, hoping that she could feel my sincerity from my eyes. My expression is serious and solemn, as if under oath, so that people cannot be doubted. The boss lady looked at my clear eyes, her eyes in my eyes for a moment. At that moment, time seemed to stand still. The whole world became quiet. The boss lady seemed to see my inner world in my eyes, saw my sincerity, helplessness, and persistence. She nodded slightly, moving gently and slowly. Who can say what will happen in the future? Her face showed a trace of understanding smile. That smile is the spring breeze. Let me feel a burst of warmth. Her eyes also have a soft, as if to tell me she believes my words, also understand my situation. I don't know which girl will be so lucky to be your girlfriend. The boss's wife suddenly sighed. The sigh seemed to carry a hint of emotion and envy. Her eyes were slightly lowered, seemingly imagining the appearance of that unknown lucky girl. The words of the boss's wife are like a gentle breeze, floating slowly in the air, with a kind of longing and expectation for the future. The bottom of her eyes flashed a strange color. The strange color is fleeting, but seems to contain a myriad of complex emotions. Perhaps it was a hint of surprise. Surprise that this tall, handsome, and sincere young man in front of her had not yet been in love. Perhaps it is a trace of appreciation. Appreciate my perseverance and sincerity in the difficult situation. Or perhaps a touch of imperceptible fluttering. In this subtle atmosphere, the color of the silk as the night sky instantly crossed the shooting star. Mysterious and elusive. I guess I'm going to die alone. I smiled bitterly. My smile with endless bitterness and helplessness. As if by fate after the self-deprecation, my eyes became dull, looking into the distance, heart full of confusion and anxiety about the future. I, a poor boy from the countryside, carrying a heavy economic burden and life pressure. In this materialistic society, my poverty is like a chasm that cannot be crossed, isolating me from the beautiful love. I often wonder, who would want to be with someone like me who has nothing? No wealth, no background, only a hard-working heart and a soul full of dreams. I look at my hands. They are a pair of rough and strong hands. Witnessed my efforts for life. However, these hands cannot bring me the warmth of love. I sighed. The bitterness in my heart grew stronger. I know. Love is not just an exchange of material. But in reality, my poverty has become the biggest obstacle to my pursuit of love. Perhaps I will really end up alone. After my ex-girlfriend's experience, I don't believe in love anymore. In this busy and indifferent world, I walk alone, without the company of my lover, without the warmth of a family. But I will not give up. I will continue to work hard, with my hands to create their own future. Maybe one day, I will meet the person who is willing to walk through the storm with me. The one who doesn't care about my poverty. The one who only values my sincerity. But before that day comes, I can only wait in loneliness. In the bitter persistence. You're so good, you'll surely meet a woman who likes you. The boss's wife suddenly grabbed my hand. At that instant, it was as if a stream of warmth passed through her palm. Chapter 16 Animal World. Her movements were a bit eager, as if she wanted to give me more comfort and encouragement through this action. The boss lady's eyes were full of sincerity and concern. She stared at me closely, as if she wanted to imprint this confidence in my heart. Her hand is soft and warm, gently wrapped around my hand. The touch made my heart tremble slightly. A strange feeling spread in the bottom of my heart. The words of the boss's wife are like the breeze of spring, softly brushing my ears, dispelling the haze in my heart. Her voice was firm and strong, full of trust and expectation for me. In her eyes, I seemed to be no longer the poor boy with low self-esteem, but a person with unlimited possibilities. She leaned forward slightly, close to me. The serious look let me feel her sincerity. Her hair shimmered softly in the light, adding a bit of tenderness to her. Her eyes were glittering with hope, as if she was painting a bright future for me. In this moment, I seemed to see a ray of light. That is the expectation of love, for the future of the vision. "Thank you, ma'am," I said gratefully. My voice was full of sincere emotion. The words came out of my mouth, as if with a warm power. My eyes glittered with gratitude, looking straight at the boss lady, as if she were a light in the darkness, bringing me hope and courage. My heart welled up a warm current. The words and actions of the boss's wife were like a flame in the winter that warmed my heart that was a little cold because of poverty. In this strange city, I often feel lonely and helpless. But the boss's concern let me feel a trace of human warmth. I secretly made up my mind. Must work harder. Live up to the trust and encouragement of the boss's wife. The boss's wife suddenly realized that she grabbed my hand a little ambiguous. Her cheeks instantly stained a touch of scarlet. The red color is just like the sunset in the sky. Beautiful and touching. She panicked and retracted her hand. Eyes showed a trace of shyness and embarrassment. She slightly lowered her head. Not dare to meet my eyes. As if a child who has done something wrong. Her fingers gently twisted the corner of her coat. That nervous look cannot help but feel pity. The air was filled with a subtle atmosphere, making people feel both embarrassed and a little hurt. The shyness of the boss's wife and my gratitude are intertwined, forming an indescribable emotion. Time seemed to stand still in this moment. Only the sound of our heartbeats echoed in the silent space. I didn't know what to say for a moment. My brain seemed to fall into a blank. The warmth and ambiguity of the moment just now still lingers in my heart, making my thoughts confused and complicated. My eyes wandered, looking around, but could not find a suitable focus. My hands were trembling slightly, not knowing where to put them. The tension and embarrassment in my heart was like a tidal wave, making me feel extremely uneasy. The boss's wife also looked to the side. Her eyes were also filled with embarrassment and shyness. Her cheeks are still lightly flushed. That beautiful face in this moment seems more moving. She slightly bit her lips, seemed to be trying to suppress her inner emotions. Her eyes fell on a distant corner, as if looking for a place to escape from this embarrassment. Her fingers gently ruffled her hair. That subtle movement reveals her inner uneasiness. Finally, I took the remote control and turned on the TV, trying to hide the awkwardness between us. My movements were a little stiff, as if this simple gesture took a lot of my strength. As the TV was turned on, the noise instantly broke the suffocating silence. I was staring at the TV screen, but I couldn't concentrate on what was on it. My mind was still stuck on the scene just now. My heart was full of contradictions and confusion. The boss's wife also turned her head slightly, looking at the TV, but I could feel that her mind was not on the TV either. We are all trying to find a way to relax, trying to get rid of this awkward atmosphere. However, the subtle emotion was still in the air, impossible to ignore. Just at this time, I absent-mindedly changed the channel. My fingers mechanically pressed the buttons on the remote control. My mind is still immersed in the embarrassing atmosphere, just could not be extricated. My eyes were hollow, unfocused, just subconsciously doing the action of changing the channel. My heart was full of uneasiness and embarrassment. Did not know how to break this suffocating silence. Just when I kept changing channels, the screen suddenly flashed. Just changed to Animal World. At that moment, My brain was blank. Completely unresponsive. Immediately afterward, screen appeared a male lion and a female lion breeding their offspring. The image was so vivid and direct that caught people off guard. I blushed with embarrassment. My cheeks instantly became hot, as if a fire was burning. My heart beat so fast that it felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. I panicked and wanted to change the channel again. But my fingers seemed to lose control. And I couldn't press the button. My eyes darted around in panic, not daring to look at the boss's wife. The boss's wife was also blushing. Her eyes were full of shyness and embarrassment. She lowered her head slightly, covering her face with her hands, as if trying to escape the embarrassing image. Her body trembled slightly, showing her inner tension and anxiety. The air was filled with an extremely awkward atmosphere, making people want to find a hole in the ground. Finally, my panicked fingers tried, successfully changed to another agricultural news station. At that moment, as if a heavy stone fell from the heart, the tension was instantly eased. My breathing also became a little smoother, no longer as rapid and disorganized as just a moment ago. On the screen, the image of agricultural news showed a vibrant field. The busy figures of farmers and the joy of harvest are intertwined. This image contrasted sharply with the embarrassing scene just now, making both the boss's wife and I let out a sigh of relief. The boss's expression gradually regained its calmness. She gently lowered her hands to cover her face. There was still a trace of shyness in her eyes, but it was more of a sense of relief. She slightly adjusted her sitting position. Eyes began to focus on the agricultural news on the TV, as if trying to get her mind off the embarrassment. I, too, tried to focus on the news, trying to fill my mind with information about agriculture to dispel the lingering embarrassment. However, even though on the surface we all seemed to have calmed down, deep down, the embarrassing scene we had just experienced still left a deep mark on our memories, making us feel a little uncomfortable when we were not aware of it. Just at this time, boss downstairs. I flashed a flash of panic. Hurry to sit upright. Chapter 17. You have to learn to tease her. Boss came downstairs. Footsteps in the quiet space seems particularly clear. His figure gradually appeared in our line of sight. When his eyes fell on me and the boss's wife, he was keenly aware of the somewhat unusual atmosphere between us. A hint of ambiguity, as if invisible silk thread between us entangled. The boss's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. The excitement was fleeting, but it was easily captured by my sharp eyes. His eyes seemed to have some more different expectations, as if he saw a wonderful story is about to be played out. I'm done, which one of you is going to take a shower? The boss asked. His voice broke the awkward silence. His tone was relaxed and natural, as if he did not notice the subtle atmosphere just now. However, his words made me and the boss's wife even more uncomfortable. The boss's wife's cheeks are slightly red again. She is a bit flustered to avoid the boss's gaze, eyes wandering. I also feel a sense of urgency. Do not know how to respond to the boss's question. The boss stood there, waiting for us to answer. His expression looks calm, but seems to hide some kind of inscrutable emotions. Mrs. Boss, let's wash first. I was the first to break the silence. My voice was slightly hoarse, as if I had just woken up from a tense dream. My eyes were firm but with a hint of hesitation. The moment I looked at the boss's wife, a complex emotion welled up in my heart. I tried to sound natural and calm, as if it was just an ordinary offer. However, behind these seemingly calm words, but hides my inner anxiety and embarrassment. I know this decision is not only about the order of bathing, but also at this delicate moment, trying to break the suffocating, ambiguous atmosphere. The boss lady heard, shook her head. Or you first. Her voice is soft and gentle, like a breeze in the spring, gently brushed my ears. Her eyes with a hint of shyness and hesitation. Slightly lowered eyes flickered in the elusive light. The boss lady's refusal was both expected, but also made me feel a little surprised. Her behavior seems to deliberately maintain a distance, but also seems to convey some kind of unspeakable emotion. Her cheeks are still lightly flushed. That beautiful face in this moment seems more moving. Her fingers gently twisted the corner of her coat. That subtle movement reveals her inner tension and anxiety. Who washes first is the same, this way, wife, you wash first, I just chat with Lin Fan. The boss laughed and spoke. His laughter was bright and clear, as if it could dispel all the embarrassment and ambiguity in the air. His eyes carried a kind of ease, as if he did not care about the situation in front of him. The boss slightly raised the corners of his mouth, eyes full of laughter looking at the boss's wife. The eyes seemed to be saying, "Everything will be arranged by me." Then, he turned his gaze to me, his eyes more curious and inquisitive. He seems to want to chat with me, to understand just in his absence. What happened here? He put his hands in his pockets casually, leaned forward slightly, and waited for the boss's response in a relaxed manner. Although his words seemed casual, but with a kind of unquestionable decisiveness. As if in this small space, he is the one who can control everything. The boss's wife heard the boss's words. The blush on her face has not completely faded. She slightly bit her lips. Eyes flashed. A hint of hesitation. But in the end, she still gently nodded. Obediently picked up her own clothes. Toward the bathroom to go. With the figure of the boss's wife disappearing from sight, the boss's smile became even wider. He turned around and looked at me, with anticipation in his eyes. It was as if he was waiting for an interesting conversation to begin. After the boss's wife disappeared on the second floor, the boss's eyes slowly looked at me. There was a hint of curiosity and inquiry in his eyes, as if he wanted to see through my expression and reaction, prying out everything that had just happened in his absence. The owner's expression was relaxed, as if he was just having a casual conversation. However, his slightly raised eyebrows and slightly pursed corners of his mouth revealed a hint of unusual concern in his heart. He leaned casually on a sofa, with his arms folded across his chest, and asked in a seemingly careless manner, "What just happened to you?" His voice was low and magnetic, with an easy flirtation in his tone. His eyes were fixed on me, not sparing me any slight change in my face. The corners of his mouth hung a faint smile. That smile seems to hide countless speculation and imagination. It was as if he had already constructed various scenarios in his mind and was just waiting for me to confirm one of them. Under the boss's gaze, I felt a moment of uneasiness. My heart beat faster and my cheeks warmed up slightly. I didn't know how to answer my boss's question, because what had just happened was so embarrassing. I tried to stay calm, trying to respond to my boss's question in a calm tone. However, my voice trembled slightly, revealing my inner tension and anxiety. "We just watched a little TV and talked," I replied. My voice was slightly strained and my eyes twinkled involuntarily. I tried to look calm and collected, but I couldn't quite hide my inner turmoil. I clasped my hands together, as if looking for a sense of support and security. "What exactly did you talk about?" the boss asked. There was a hint of eagerness and curiosity in his tone, and his eyes focused even more intently on me. The boss's questioning made me feel more nervous. I hesitated, not knowing whether to tell the truth. But, looking at the boss's expectant eyes, I know I cannot hide. I took a deep breath to make myself as calm as possible, and then honestly told the boss the content. I recounted in detail our initial conversation, to the awkwardness, to the final scene when the boss appeared. My words were full of truth and sincerity, without the slightest concealment or falsehood. While I was telling the story, I was observing my boss's expression, fearing that he would have any dissatisfied or angry reaction. However, the boss's expression has been very calm. He listened carefully to my story, occasionally nodded slightly, as if thinking about something. When I finished speaking, the boss was silent for a moment, and then smiled gently. His smile did not have a trace of blame or jealousy, but was full of understanding and tolerance. He patted my shoulder, said, "You are still too young, and women chat, how to talk about this kind of nutrient-free things, you have to learn to drive their emotions, you have to learn to tease her." Chapter 18. The coming days will be long. Hearing the words of the boss, I was instantly dumbfounded. My eyes were wide open, as if I couldn't believe what I had just heard. My mouth slightly open, but cannot send out any sound. The whole person is like being cast a spell. Rigid there. My mind went blank, completely unable to understand why the boss would say such a thing. The boss is teaching me how to flirt with the boss's wife. This feels a bit ridiculous. This scene is really too unexpected. Let me feel immensely shocked and confused. In my perception, the boss and the boss's wife are husband and wife. And I'm just an ordinary employee. How could the boss make such a move? This is completely beyond the scope of my imagination. Let me feel both ridiculous and incredible. My heart welled up countless questions. Don't know what purpose the boss is. Also don't know how to deal with this strange situation. I feel that I am in an incredibly awkward situation. Don't know what to do. Why are you so surprised? The boss slightly frowned. Eyes showed a hint of hatred. If you don't flirt with her, how will your relationship break through the window paper? His tone has a hint of urgency, as if he is anxious for me. The boss's eyes were fixed on me, as if he wanted to see something in my face. You're just too mute. The boss gently shook his head, with a helpless expression on his face. You may be handsome, but you're not as good as me at flirting with girls. His tone with a hint of complacency, as if recalling his youthful glory. When I was young, I had no money, but there was still no lack of women, and my wife was married by me with empty hands. The boss's face is full of smiles, eyes full of pride. He seemed to show off his charm and means to me, so I could not help but be impressed by him. The boss's words left me in deep thought. I didn't know how to respond to his words, because I had never thought of flirting with the boss's wife. In my opinion, the boss's wife is the boss's wife. I should keep a proper distance, respect their marital relationship. But the boss's words made me think about my love life. Am I really being too dull? Should I be more proactive in pursuing my own happiness? These questions kept circling in my mind, making me feel confused and lost. I do admire my boss. He dares to think and do. As far as I know, few people can think and act as boldly as my boss. He never seems to be afraid of challenges and difficulties. Always full of courage and determination to pursue what he wants, whether in business or in life. The boss has shown a remarkable boldness and determination. The boss taught me seriously. Taught me how to flirt with girls, and if I flirt with the boss's wife. His eyes were full of passion and concentration, as if he was teaching an extremely important skill. The boss's words were clear, in depth. He started from the basic principles of psychology, analyzing the psychological needs and behavioral patterns of women. He told me how to express my feelings through words and actions, and how to get the other person's interest and attention. The boss also shared some of his own personal experiences when he was young, with vivid stories to illustrate his skills of flirting with women. His narration was full of humor and fun, making me unconsciously attracted, listening attentively to his every word. However, although the boss's teaching was very wonderful, I was full of contradictions and entanglements in my heart. On the one hand, I admired my boss's courage and wisdom, and I was also interested in his flirting skills. On the other hand, I feel that this is not appropriate. After all, the boss is the boss's wife. I should not have non-thinking. I fell into a deep thinking. Do not know how to choose. All right, you guys get along, the boss slowly said, his eyes with a deep meaning, as if he had already foreseen the future of all kinds of possibilities. The future is long, do not be in a hurry, feelings of things need time to cultivate, you have enough opportunities to understand each other, you slowly take her, my wife is still very good to tease. The boss's tone is calm and composed, giving people a feeling of peace of mind. I will also create opportunities for you. The boss patted my shoulder meaningfully. His palm is broad and strong. That gentle pat. But seems to contain endless expectations and encouragement. The corners of the boss's mouth rose slightly, revealing a mysterious smile. His eyes flashed with a sly light. Seems to be planning something. I was a bit overwhelmed by the boss's words and actions. My heart was both nervous and expectant. I didn't know what the boss would do. And I didn't know what the opportunity he was talking about would be. But at that moment, I could feel my boss's determination and sincerity. He seemed to really want something to happen between me and my boss's wife. I stood there, quietly looking at the boss, heart full of questions and uneasiness. The boss seemed to have sensed my emotions. He smiled and patted my shoulder again, and then turned to leave, leaving me alone in the same place. Fell into a deep meditation. A short while later, the boss lady finished showering, wearing a towel slowly downstairs. Her hair is still a little wet. A few strands pasted on the white cheeks. More added a few charming. The bath towel on the boss lady is as white as snow, loosely wrapped around her exquisite body, revealing her long neck and delicate collarbone. Her footsteps were light. Every step seemed to carry an elegant rhythm. "Lin Fan, I'm done, you go and wash." The boss lady's voice was gentle and melodious, like heavenly music echoing in the air. Her eyes were clear and bright, looking at me with a faint smile. That smile is like the warm sun in the spring. Let a person feel incomparably warm and comfortable. She slightly raised her chin, indicating that I can go to the shower. At that moment, I seemed to be attracted by her beauty and gentleness. For a moment I was a little lost in thought. But soon, I came back to my senses, smiled awkwardly, and hurriedly answered, "Yes, thank you, madam." Then, I picked up my own clothes and walked towards the bathroom, while the boss lady is standing in place, looking at my back. I seemed to flash a complex emotion. I came to the bathroom on the second floor. Footsteps on the wooden stairs made a slight sound, as if each step was on my nervous and expectant heart. When I slowly pushed open the door into the bathroom, a damp smell hit me. That breath seems to be mixed with the unique fragrance of the boss's wife. Instantly let my heartbeat involuntarily accelerated a few points. I raised my eyes to look, only to see the walls around the wet water droplets as if still slowly sliding down. That is, the boss lady has just bathed, left traces, like a mysterious mark. Let my mind cannot help but appear the boss lady, that graceful body in this small space of the picture. At this moment, my eyes were attracted by an unexpected discovery. Next to the boss's wife's intimate underwear, that small piece of fabric, at this moment but seems to have endless magic, let my cheeks instantly hot. A kind of ambiguous and shy feeling spread in the heart. My eyes seemed to be fixed in general. Cannot move away from that. Heart surged up. Countless complex emotions. Have nervousness. Have shyness. There is a kind of unspeakable throbbing. Chapter 19. You listen to my explanation. Ghostly. I seem to be a kind of invisible force pulling instinctively toward the pants walked over. My footsteps are slow and somewhat hesitant. Every step is like stepping on a cloud. Light but with a kind of inexplicable heaviness. My heart was beating like a drum, as if it was about to burst out of my chest. I slowly reached out my hand, which was trembling slightly, as if it was out of my control. My fingers gently touched the pants. The soft touch instantly spread all over the body. Let my body involuntarily shudder. I gently picked it up. The small piece of fabric seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds in my hand. My mind was in chaos. All kinds of thoughts like a tidal wave came. There is excitement. There is shyness. There is panic and a kind of unspeakable ambiguous feelings. I stared blankly at the pants in my hand, not knowing why I made such a move. Also do not know what to do next. A trace of shame arose in my heart. In that moment, my reason seemed to rebuke me loudly, telling me how inappropriate and immoral my behavior was. My cheeks were burning. As if a fire was burning. My heart was beating violently. As if I was upset about my wrongdoing. I felt it was wrong. I knew I should not have behaved in such a way. It was not only disrespectful to the boss's wife. It was a challenge to my own moral boundaries. However, the deepest desire, but as an invisible hand, tightly grasped me, drove me to put these pants under my nose. The desire seemed to have an irresistible power, making my body act involuntarily. My mind was struggling, trying to stop me. But the desire was like a flood, drowning out the voice of reason. As my nose approached the pants, a complex of emotions came over me. There was shame, nervousness, curiosity, and an unspeakable excitement. The faint scent that entered my nostrils made my heart beat harder, and my thoughts became confused. I seemed to be caught in an uncontrollable vortex, pulled by both desire and shame. Not knowing what to do. I felt like a pervert right now. This realization was like a sharp dagger, stabbing me in the heart, making me feel immensely ashamed and remorseful. My face turned red, as if it had been roasted by fire, and my body trembled slightly because of my nervousness and anxiety. I cannot believe that I would do such a ridiculous behavior. I think I have lost my mind, become a monster driven by desire. However, I couldn't control my emotions at all. The strong desire was like a surging tide, wave after wave of impact on my rational defense. I tried to struggle, tried to get rid of this inappropriate impulse. But my efforts seemed so weak. My heart beat like thunder. Blood rushed through my body, as if it wanted to break through my veins. My breathing became rapid and disorganized, each breath carrying an uncontrollable longing. My mind could not help but flash the figure of the boss's wife. Her beautiful face, curvaceous body, gentle smile. Like a movie screen in my mind constantly floating. Her every detail is so clear, as if right in front of my eyes. It was as if I could feel her breath, hear her voice, touch her skin. This fantasy made my desire even hotter, and sent me into a deeper state of confusion and struggle. I know my behavior is wrong, but I can't help myself. As if bound by a mysterious force. Just at this time, the bathroom door clicked. The crisp sound like a thunderbolt in this small space. My heart shuddered, instantly enveloped in fear and panic. The boss's wife pushed the door, her figure like a goddess who suddenly descended, leaving me stunned and at a loss for words. Her hair is still a little wet. A few strands of hair casually pasted on the cheeks, adding a bit more charming. Her eyes with a trace of surprise and doubt. When she saw me holding her intimate panties, her face instantly became red. Eyes flashed a trace of shyness and anger. I stood there, still clutching the panties in my hand, as if I had been frozen in time. My mind went blank, not knowing how to deal with this embarrassing situation. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. The air became unusually heavy, making it almost impossible to breathe. Lin Fan, how could you do this? The boss's wife's voice trembled slightly, with intense anger. Her eyes were filled with disappointment and shock, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her face instantly became red. That was the expression of being furious to the extreme, but also mixed with a shyness that was hard to hide. The boss lady's beautiful face, at the moment because of the emotional fluctuations, appeared a little twisted. Her originally gentle eyes are now lit up with anger. She stared straight at me, as if she wanted to penetrate me with her gaze. Her body is also slightly trembling because of anger. The tightly clenched fists, showing her heart's extreme dissatisfaction. I always thought you were a decent person, but I never thought you would do such a thing. The boss lady's words were full of accusations. Every word was like a sharp blade, stabbing hard into my heart. Her voice echoed in the small bathroom, making me feel even more ashamed. I stood there, still clutching the panties in my hand, as if under a spell, unable to move. My brain is a mess. Do not know how to explain this embarrassing situation. Also, do not know how to face the boss's anger. Boss lady, you listen to my explanation, I said anxiously, with a hint of panic and anxiety in my voice. My eyes were full of prayers, hoping that the boss lady can give me a chance to explain. However, when I tried to explain, but realized that I cannot say. My brain is in chaos. Thoughts like a mess. Don't know where to start. My lips trembled slightly, trying hard to organize language, but could only stutter out a few incoherent words. Boss lady, I didn't mean to. I just, I stammered. But I couldn't fully express myself. I stammered and stammered, but I couldn't fully express myself. My heart was full of remorse and self-blame. I knew that my behavior had seriously hurt the feelings of the boss's wife and damaged the trust between us. I looked at the boss's angry expression, heart full of guilt. I want to explain clearly. Want to let the boss lady understand my true thoughts. But my mouth seems to be stuck like glue. How can not open? I feel like I'm in an impossible predicament. I don't know how to regain my boss's trust in me. Chapter 20, you almost screwed it up. You don't have to explain, the boss's wife said angrily, her voice rising a few decibels, with intense anger and resentment. Her eyes flashed with anger. That anger seemed to be able to burn up the air around her. You did such a thing, what else do you have to explain? The boss lady's words were full of accusations. Every word was like a sharp blade, stabbing hard to my heart. Afterwards, the boss's wife quickly snatched the pants from my hand. Her action was decisive and resolute. Without the slightest hesitation, she clutched the pants tightly, as if they were her last vestige of dignity. The boss's face was still red, and her breathing became rapid and disorganized. She glared at me with a look of disappointment and anger. Then, she turned and left the bathroom, leaving me alone there, into a deep self-blame and remorse. Looking at the boss's back, my eyes closely followed her, as if pulled by an invisible force. Her back in my line of sight gradually faded away. That graceful figure at the moment seemed so determined and cold. I opened my mouth. Want to say something but could not say. As if my throat was blocked by a piece of cotton. Could not produce a sound. My brain is blank. As if swept by a sudden storm. All thoughts were blown to pieces. I feel finished. A kind of despair spread in my heart. I know. My behavior has deeply hurt the boss's wife. Destroyed the original harmonious relationship between us. I don't know how to undo all this. Also don't know whether the boss's wife will still forgive me. My heart is full of remorse and self-reproach. I hate myself why I would make a mistake to do that kind of thing. I stood there, motionless, like a puppet that has been fixed. Heart full of helplessness and confusion. Alas! I sighed deeply. That sigh seemed to contain endless remorse and helplessness. This sigh echoed in the silent bathroom, adding a few points of despondency and melancholy. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my own confused thoughts. However, the heavy mood is like a huge stone, pressed in my heart. Let me no matter how cannot relax. At this moment, I am at a loss, not knowing how to face the next situation. My mind constantly surfaced the angry expression of the boss's wife and left the back of the determination. Heart full of guilt and uneasiness. I numbly turned on the hot water heater switch, listening to the sound of the water rushing. My eyes are empty. My body mechanically performed the action, as if it had lost its soul. The mist of the hot water filled my surroundings, but it couldn't warm my cold heart. I stood there, letting the hot water fall on my body, but could not feel a trace of warmth. Only endless confusion and pain in my heart. I don't know how long has passed. Time seems to have lost its meaning in this moment. I finished the bath. Hot water flowed through the body, but could not warm my cold and panic heart. I mechanically wiped my body. Each action seemed so stiff and numb. My mind was still immersed in the embarrassing and terrible scene just now, unable to extricate myself. Finally, I wiped my body clean, wearing a towel slowly out of the bathroom door. At that moment, my mood is terrible to the extreme, as if I am about to face an inescapable judgment. However, when I looked up, I found my boss waiting for me outside the door. His figure was like a silent mountain, exuding a kind of inscrutable majesty. His face was somber. His eyes glittered with complexity, with doubt, with anger, and perhaps a hint of disappointment. I stood there, my body trembling under the towel, not knowing how to face the boss's questioning, filled with fear and anxiety. "Boss, why are you here?" I looked at the boss in horror. My voice was unconsciously trembling. My heart seems to be held tightly by a big invisible hand, so nervous that I can hardly breathe. My eyes were full of panic and uneasiness, as if a frightened deer instinctively thought that the bosses too ask for punishment. After all, just happened that embarrassing and unforgivable things. My mind instantly imagined a variety of terrible consequences. Boss will be furious? Would the boss be furious? Would he just fire me? Or would he take even harsher punitive measures? Thinking of these, my body involuntarily trembled even more. My face also became white. Completely do not know how to deal with the situation in front of me. "You come with me." The boss's voice is low and strong, as if from a distant place, but with a kind of unquestionable majesty. Imagined boss temper did not happen, which left me after a short period of surprise. The heart of the uneasiness but more intense. He just looked at me grimly. That glance seemed to be a cold lightning. Instantly penetrated my soul. His eyes are full of complex emotions. There is the dark current of anger in the surge. There is doubt in the flash. There is a kind of let a person cannot understand the deep. I stood still, overwhelmed by the boss's look. The body seems to be fixed in general. Cannot move the slightest bit. But under the boss's very oppressive gaze, I had to force myself to move. I slowly moved my feet, following the boss. Every step felt very heavy. My heart is full of apprehension. Don't know where the boss is going to take me. Also don't know what fate will be waiting for me. The boss took me into the next bedroom. The second bedroom is dark and silent. Air filled with a dull atmosphere. Weak light from the half-covered curtains through the gap barely illuminated a corner of the room. The furnishings in the room are simple and old. A single bed is placed against the wall, with some brand new sheets on it. A wooden closet stood quietly in the corner, as if telling the story of the years. The boss walked ahead in silence. His silhouette appeared a little blurred in the dim light. I was uneasy to follow behind. Every step feels like stepping on cotton, floating and powerless. When the boss walked into the room, he turned around and gently closed the door. The slight sound of the door closing in this silent space but seems particularly loud, as if a fateful gate is slowly closed. Then, the boss turned back, looking at me coldly. His eyes are like cold swords, straight to my heart. There was not the slightest warmth in that gaze, only endless indifference and reproach. "You almost screwed it up." The boss's voice is low and harsh. Every word is like a heavy stone, hard on my heart. His tone was full of anger and disappointment, making me instantly feel a huge pressure. I stood there, with my head down, not daring to meet my boss's eyes. My heart is full of guilt and remorse. I don't know how to respond to the boss's accusations. Also don't know how I can make up for the mistakes I made. Chapter 21. Later at 12 o'clock. You open the door, don't sleep. I have never seen her lose her temper so much. The boss looked at me coldly. His eyes were full of doubt and reproach. He frowned slightly. The deep lines seemed to tell his inner dissatisfaction. "What did you do to her?" The boss's voice grew lower, like a muffled thunderclap echoing in the small second bedroom. I stood there, tangled, my hands unconsciously clenched. Cold sweat broke out on my palms. I didn't know whether to tell my boss the truth or not. It was a bit hard to say. The embarrassing scene just now kept popping up in my mind. Every detail was like a sharp thorn, which made me feel pain in my heart. If I tell the truth, how will my boss think of me? Will he be even more angry? Or even sweep me out of the door? But if I hide it, how long can I hide it? My heart is full of contradictions and uneasiness. As if there are two small people in a fierce fight. One is urging me to confess. One is warning me of the seriousness of the consequences. I hung my head down, eyes wandering, not dare to meet the sharp eyes of the boss. Completely caught in a dilemma. Speak up, or you'll jeopardize the plan, I won't spare you. The boss looked at me coldly. The eyes like sharp ice blade. As if it can instantly penetrate my soul. His voice was low and strong, echoing in the air. With a kind of unquestionable majesty. The boss stood in front of me. His tall figure as if a lofty mountain peak. Giving me a strong sense of oppression. His face was somber. His eyebrows locked. His eyes flashed with anger. He stared at me. As if he wanted to see through me. Forcing me to tell the truth. I can feel the powerful aura emanating from the boss. A surge of fear in my heart. I know. If I do not tell the truth as soon as possible, the consequences will be unimaginable. The boss is a thunderous man. He is extremely demanding on the implementation of the plan. He does not tolerate any error. Once the plan is effected, his anger will be like a volcano eruption. Unbearable. I swallowed nervously, trying to calm myself down. My mind raced, thinking about how to answer my boss's question. I knew that I couldn't just make up a lie to satisfy him. Because the boss was very smart. He could easily recognize my lie. I have to find a reasonable explanation. Let him believe that I did not deliberately hide the truth. But I didn't dare to say it. If the boss knew what I did in the bathroom, would he fire me? Boss, I didn't mean to leave it out. I stammered, with a tremor in my voice. It is just that this matter is more complicated. I do not dare to tell you. I am afraid that if I say it now, it will make you angry. When the boss heard my words, his face became even more gloomy. He narrowed his eyes slightly. And the anger in his eyes seemed to be even more intense. What exactly did you do to her that she got angry and found me and told me to kick you out, saying you were dangerous? Whatever it is, you say, as long as it doesn't affect our plans, I won't blame you. I sensed my boss's anger had peaked. I knew I couldn't put it off any longer. I took a deep breath. And plucked up the courage to say, Boss, things are like this. I began to tell my boss everything in detail. Trying to be as objective and accurate as possible. I don't dare to have the slightest concealment. Because I know. Once the boss found out that I am hiding something, the consequences will be even more serious. Because I do not know whether the boss's wife told the boss everything. The boss is not testing me? The boss quietly listened to my story. His face gradually eased a little. He interrupted me from time to time. Asking questions. Asking me to explain further. I answered his questions carefully, fearing that I might say a wrong word. Finally, I finished all the information. The boss was silent for a moment. And then slowly said, Are you sure what you said is the truth? I quickly nodded. Said, Boss, I guarantee with my personality, what I said is true. The boss looked at me. Eyes revealed a hint of thinking. He seemed to weigh the credibility of what I said. After a while, the boss said, Well, I'll believe you this time. However, if I find out that you have hidden or cheated me in any way, you know what the consequences will be. I quickly said, Boss, I swear, it's true. The boss took a deep breath. That heavy breathing sound seemed to create a slight ripple in this silent space. When he learned what I did, he was indeed a little surprised. His eyes widened slightly. His eyes showed a touch of surprise that was hard to hide. In the boss's perception, I have always been an honest person. He never thought I would do such a thing. In his impression, I have always been conscientious to complete every task. Never cause trouble. I treat my work seriously and responsibly. And I am also sincere and kind to people. And I never do anything out of the ordinary. So, when he learned of my behavior, the kind of shock as a calm lake was thrown into a huge stone. The waves rose layer by layer. Okay, be careful in the future, don't let her find out again. The boss took a deep breath and slowly accepted what I had done. Although his tone was serious, there was also a hint of weirdness in it. He frowned slightly, with an admonishing look in his eyes. This matter is over, don't do it again, I will find a way to stabilize her. You slowly cultivate a relationship with her, and find an opportunity to take her down again. The boss's words revealed a kind of scheming and calculating. He seems to be carefully planning a complicated chess game. And the boss's wife and I are the key pieces in this game. The boss's eyes became deep, as if he was thinking about the feasibility of each step. By the way, at 12 o'clock, leave the door open and don't go to sleep. The boss suddenly smiled strangely. That smile seems to hide countless secrets and mysteries. Finished. He slowly walked out of the second bedroom room, leaving me alone there, heart full of doubts and uneasiness. I stood in place. My mind constantly recalled the boss's words. I don't know what he is planning. Also don't know what kind of situation I am about to face. But I know, from this moment, my fate seems to be involved in an unpredictable storm. I can only follow the instructions of the boss to do. Hope to find a way out of this complicated situation. With the departure of the boss, the room fell into a silence. I stood quietly. My mind was full of thoughts. I began to think about whether I had done the right thing, and where the future would take me. I knew that I had embarked on a path full of challenges and unknowns, and I had to face them bravely. 12 p.m. What will happen? Why did the boss tell me to leave the door open? Chapter 22. Master bedroom door left open. After the boss left, the room was quiet. I lie alone on the bed. Thoughts but like a tidal wave like surging. Just now the boss's words continue to echo in my mind. Let my mood for a long time cannot be calm. I gently lie in this bed. Feel it soft and comfortable. This bed is too comfortable. As if a warm embrace. Let a person cannot help but want to sink into it. The elasticity of the mattress is just right. Neither too soft to let people fall in and can't extricate themselves, nor too hard to make people feel uncomfortable. The material of the bed sheet is delicate and smooth, sticking to the skin like silky satin, giving a feeling of incomparable coziness. I even felt like I was on a cloud, surrounded by a relaxing atmosphere. However, despite the comfort of the bed, I could not let myself be immersed in it. I always remembered my boss's words. No sleeping at 12 p.m. This instruction is like a heavy shackle, tightly bound to me. I know. The boss's command must have his reason. I cannot go against his wishes. So, I tried my best to stay awake, not letting myself be tempted by the comfort of my bed. To make sure I didn't fall asleep at 12 o'clock, I even set an alarm. I carefully set the time for the alarm, to make sure it would go off at exactly 12 o'clock. I put my cell phone at my bedside, so I could hear the alarm first. When I finished these preparations, felt a little relieved. But I still do not dare to take it lightly. I always remind myself to keep vigilant. Can not have the slightest slack. I lie in bed, eyes looking at the ceiling, trying to keep my thoughts clear. I began to recall the recent events, thinking about the boss's plan and my role in it. I tried to find some clues from these memories, in order to better understand the intentions of the boss. However, my thoughts always drifted to the soft bed, and I had to pull myself back to reality again and again. Time passed by. My mood became more and more nervous. I knew that 12 o'clock was coming, and I didn't know what would happen at that moment. I began to imagine all possible scenarios, filled with anxiety and anticipation. I kept telling myself to stay calm, to be ready for anything. During the long wait, I felt as if time had frozen. Every minute became so long, making me suffer. I kept changing my position, trying to make myself more comfortable. But I couldn't get rid of the nervousness. I longed for the time to pass. But at the same time, I was afraid of that moment. This contradiction made me feel extremely agonized and torn. Finally, after that long wait, 12 o'clock as a long-awaited mysterious visitor quietly descended. Silent room. Time seems to be frozen in this moment. The air also seems to become more heavy. The sound of the alarm clock, like a sharp sword, instantly cut through the heavy silence. Ding bell. The sound was sharp and urgent, echoing in the room, as if urging for something. This alarm clock sounded like from a distant place, with an irresistible force, instantly pulled me from that wandering thoughts back to reality. My original somewhat trance consciousness, at the moment of hearing the sound of the alarm clock, immediately became incredibly lucid. My heart beat faster, as if it was pounding nervously in anticipation of an unknown challenge. My body also tensed up in an instant. Every cell seemed to enter a state of high alert. I stared at the alarm clock that kept ringing, eyes full of determination. This moment, I have been waiting for too long. And now, it has finally arrived. I know. No matter what we'll face next, I have to face bravely. Cannot have the slightest retreat. The sound of the alarm clock continued to reverberate in the room. Each sound was like a reminder of my mission. It is like a horn on the battlefield, inspiring me to go forward, to meet the unknown fate. I took a deep breath, slowly sat up from the bed, prepared for what was to come. The first thing I did was to turn off my cell phone alarm. The sound of the ringing alarm ended abruptly. The room was instantly silent again. I moved very quickly, as if I was afraid that the sound would cause any unnecessary trouble. Fingered gently in the cell phone screen a stroke. That disturbing sound disappeared without a trace. Then, I tiptoed out of bed. Every movement is careful, not to make a sound. My feet gently fell to the ground, like a feather, without making any noise. I slightly bent over, as if an agent on a secret mission, cautious and alert. I slowly straighten up, eyes constantly scanning the surrounding, ensure that there is no abnormal situation. Then, I gently moved my feet, step by step toward the door of the room. Every step, I have to pause for a moment, listening carefully to the surrounding movement. My heartbeat involuntarily accelerated. Nervousness spread in my heart. Finally, I came to the door of the room. My hand gently gripped the doorknob, slowly turned. The slight friction sound in this silent environment seems particularly clear. Make my nerves more tense. I carefully pushed open the door. The small sound of the door shaft made my heart tighten. I tried to control my breathing, not to have the slightest carelessness. After opening the door, I poked my head out and looked at the situation outside again. After making sure that there is no abnormality, I slowly walked out of the room, ready to meet what may happen next. My heart was full of anticipation and uneasiness, not knowing what kind of challenge would be waiting for me. Just then, my eyes were drawn to the master bedroom next to me. At that moment, as if there is an invisible force pulling my line of sight, making me irresistibly look in that direction. My eyes widened slightly. A strong curiosity welled up in my heart. I saw that the door to the master bedroom was not closed, leaving a gap 2 fingers wide. That gap in the dim light seems particularly mysterious, as if it is a portal to the unknown world. Through the narrow gap, I can vaguely see some of the scene inside the room. The shadow and light are intertwined, creating a hazy and mysterious atmosphere. My heartbeat involuntarily accelerated. An indescribable feeling of nervousness surged to my heart. I stared at the gap, and all kinds of speculations kept surfacing in my mind. Why was the door to the master bedroom left open? The master bedroom is the room of the boss and his wife. Are the boss and his wife asleep? Did they forget to close the door? Countless questions swirled in my mind. making me impatient to find out. I stood still, staring at the gap, as if under a spell. I leaned forward slightly, as if I wanted to get closer to the door, but did not dare to take a step. I was afraid that if I approached, it would break the mysterious tranquility, leading to unexpected consequences. The 2-finger-wide gap was like a seductive mystery, constantly attracting my attention. I tried to restrain my curiosity, telling myself not to take risks. But I could not take my eyes off the gap, as if bound by a powerful magic. I suddenly thought of what my boss said to me. He told me not to go to bed at 12 o'clock at night, and to leave the door open. Did. Chapter 23. What are you doing? Hate. A bold speculation appeared in my mind. This guess is like a lightning bolt that suddenly broke into my mind, instantly illuminated the doubts in my heart. My mind began to race, and various possibilities kept surfacing in my mind. I think the master bedroom door was intentionally left open by the boss. Once this idea appeared, it grew like a weed in my heart. I began to carefully recall the boss's expression and behavior when he left, trying to find some clues to confirm my guess. The boss's strange smile seems to be in front of my eyes. His every expression and action is full of deep meaning. Did he expect me to notice the master bedroom door at 12 o'clock? He intentionally left this gap. Is there any special purpose? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this speculation made sense. The boss has always been a meticulous and skillful planner. Every decision he makes is well thought out, not the slightest bit hasty. If he really left this door open on purpose, then he must have his plan. I began to imagine the boss's intentions. Maybe he wanted to pass some kind of message through this gap. Or he wanted me to discover something important. Or this is a test for me, to see if I have enough courage and wisdom to explore this mysterious room. My mind was filled with curiosity and nervousness. I didn't know what I would find if I walked into the master bedroom. But I also realized that once I took this step, I might be in an unpredictable situation. However, my curiosity eventually overcame my fear, and I decided to face the challenge with courage. I stared closely at the gap, secretly determined in my heart. No matter what is waiting for me, I have to bravely go to explore, to unravel this mysterious mystery. I believe that only in this way I can better understand the intentions of the boss, to complete the task he gave me. Just at this time, if not sound quietly into my ears. At first, the sound was extremely subtle, as if a breeze drifted from a distant place, making it difficult to grasp. I couldn't help but stop all the action, stand quietly in place, pricked his ears to listen carefully. As time passed, the sound gradually became clearer. I suddenly heard a conversation coming from the master bedroom. The voice was so familiar that my heartbeat instantly accelerated. It was the boss and his wife talking. Their voices were intertwined, sometimes low, sometimes high, as if they were having a heated discussion. I tried hard to hear what they were saying, but due to the distance, I could only catch some vague words. However, even these faint sounds were enough to make me feel the importance of their conversation. My mind began to wander with speculations. What were they talking about? Is it about important company decisions? Or family matters? Or was it something about me? Countless questions were rising in my mind, making me eager to get closer to the door, to hear what they were talking about. But I also know that it is very dangerous to do so. If they found out, I did not know what would happen to me. I stood there, hesitating. On the one hand, my curiosity drove me to find out what they were talking about. On the other hand, my reason told me not to take any chances. My heart was in a fierce struggle, as if there were two little people in my mind constantly arguing. In the end, reason prevailed over curiosity. I decided to stay away from the door and wait for the right time to find out what they were talking about. However, The sound of the conversation was like a magic spell, echoing in my head. I had to listen to it. This idea was like an unstoppable flame, burning in my heart. It was as if a small voice inside me was constantly urging me. The strong curiosity was like an invisible hand, gripping my heart and making me irresistible. I stood still. My eyes couldn't help but look at the master bedroom door again. The 2-finger-wide gap seemed to emit a mysterious attraction, tempting me to approach it, to explore the secrets behind the door. My reason is constantly reminding me, this is not the right thing to do. May bring unexpected consequences. However, the curiosity was like a raging tidal wave. Wave after wave of impact on my rational defense. I hesitated for a moment, but finally decided to approach the master bedroom door. My steps became extremely careful, as if each step was on thin ice. I gently moved my body, little by little closer to the door, and my heart pounded as I did so. I could feel my breath catching in my throat, and tension spread through my body. As I approached the door to the master bedroom, my movements became more cautious. I leaned slightly to the side and pressed my ear to the crack. My mind was filled with anticipation and anxiety, not knowing what I was going to hear. I told myself, just listen carefully. Just a little. This thought repeated itself over and over again in my mind, as if to reassure myself. With my ear pressed firmly in the direction of the doorway, the faint sound of the conversation became a little clearer. I tried hard to distinguish their words, trying to get some useful information from them. However, the content of their conversation is still blurred. I can only hear some intermittent words and phrases. My mood became more anxious. Wanted to hear their conversation more clearly. But I also know I cannot be too risky. Once discovered, the consequences will be unimaginable. At the moment, I was fully concentrated on pressing my ear against the doorway, as if the whole world had fallen silent. Only the faint sound from the master bedroom remained. My heartbeat involuntarily accelerated. Nervousness and curiosity are intertwined, so that I do not dare to breathe out. Suddenly, I heard it clearly. What are you doing? This is the boss's wife's voice. The voice with a little shy, like the spring breeze blowing through the flowers, gently swaying, with a different kind of temptation. The tone of voice seems to be angry, but there is a trace of undetectable ecstasy. The owner's voice is like a clear silver bell, especially clear in this silent atmosphere, making people can't help but think. Imagining the scene behind the door, I wet my hands so that I can turn the pages. The boss laughed. The boss's voice is low and magnetic. That bad smile seems to contain endless ambiguity and flirtation. It can be imagined that at this moment his face must be hanging a wry smile, eyes full of teasing. Although his words are short, but full of hints, let a person instantly understand his intentions. Hate. The shy voice of the boss's wife came out. The boss lady's this hate, like falling petals, soft and full of shyness. There was a hint of anger in her voice, but it also let people feel the emotion in her heart. Chapter 24 Eavesdropping. This simple 2 words, but seems to contain 1,000 words. Will boss lady's shyness and heart show to the fullest. Her voice is like gurgling water, flowing in the air, making people's hearts also become soft. I held my breath outside, listening intently to the ambiguous conversation between the boss and the boss's wife. That sound is like a silk thread, quietly drilled into my ears, winding in my heart. Every word, every sentence, seems to carry a mysterious power. Let me involuntarily immersed in it. When those words full of ambiguous flavor into my ears, my heart trembled. It was an indescribable vibration, as if a boulder had been thrown into a calm lake. Ripples appeared in the layers. My heartbeat seemed to skip a beat at that moment. A kind of complex emotion surged to my heart. Surprise, nervousness, excitement, All kinds of emotions are intertwined. Let me do not know what to do. I never thought that I would be in such a moment. Hear the boss and the boss's wife so private conversation. Their words were full of ambiguity, making my blood boil as a bystander. My mind couldn't help but conjure up all sorts of images, imagining what it would be like to see them behind the door. However, I immediately felt ashamed and uneasy for such thoughts. I knew that I shouldn't have eavesdropped on their conversation. It was an immoral act. I tried to calm myself down and divert my attention from their conversation. But the ambiguous voice seemed to have a kind of magic, constantly echoing in my ears, making it difficult for me to extricate myself. I stood there, caught in a deep contradiction, not knowing what to do. Don't, Lin Fan is next door, what if he hears us? The boss's wife suddenly said shyly. The voice of the boss's wife was like the petals of a flower falling on a spring day, soft and with a hint of panic. Her tone was full of worry and shyness, as if she were a child who had done something wrong, afraid of being found out. She mentioned me in her words, and was clearly upset that I might hear what they were about to do. The boss's voice trembled slightly, revealing her inner tension and anxiety. Her face flushed, and eyes showed a mixture of anticipation and fear. Afraid of what? The soundproofing of the house is so good, he won't hear. The boss gave a bad smile. The boss's voice is low and magnetic. That bad smile is full of confidence and flirtation. He seems to be very confident in the soundproofing effect of the house, not worried about being heard by me next door. The boss's words carry a relaxed tone, as if to comfort the boss's wife. Let her not worry too much. His eyes flickered with a hint of cunning, seemingly enjoying the excitement of sneaking around. The boss slightly raised the corners of his mouth, showing a smug smile. Good. Well. The boss's wife's voice was as thin as a mosquito fly, with a little helplessness and shyness, as if it were a delicate flower gently swaying in the breeze. Her tone reveals a hint of reluctance, but more as a kind of obedience and tenderness. The voice was like the petals of a gently falling flower, with a kind of softness that makes people feel sorry for her. The boss's wife seemed to have gone through a lot of struggle in her heart, and finally chose to compromise. Her face flushed lightly. Eyes showed a nervous and expectant look. She slightly lowered her head, not dare to look at the boss's eyes, as if a shy girl. Then I heard an indescribable sound. That sound is like the spring rain, gently sprinkled on the ground, with a mysterious and seductive atmosphere. The sound was full of ambiguity and passion, making one's heart beat faster. Each note seems to be an invisible silk thread, tightly entangled in the human heart. Let people cannot be extricated. And the sound of the bed creaking. The sound is like an old clock, in the silence of the night to make a rhythmic sound. The bed creaks as if telling an unknown story, full of mystery and temptation. The sound became more and more urgent, as if echoing the indescribable sound, creating a heated atmosphere. I stood outside, listening to these sounds, heart full of embarrassment and excitement. I don't know what to do, whether to continue to listen, or hurry to leave this embarrassing place. My heart was beating hard, and I felt a heat on my face. I know I shouldn't eavesdrop on other people's privacy, but the voice seemed to have a kind of magic, making me unable to control my curiosity. In the end, I did not leave. I held my breath, as if time stood still in this moment. The air around me also seemed to freeze. My body slightly leaned forward, concentrated on the ears, not dare to have the slightest slack. Every tiny sound is like a precious clue, pulling my nerves. My heartbeat was as violent as a drum, and a nervousness spread in my heart. I carefully captured every sound coming from the master bedroom. The sound seemed to have a kind of mysterious magic, making me want to get closer but also full of nagging feelings. My eyes narrowed slightly, looking tense and concentrated, as if an agent on a secret mission. I listened carefully. This feeling makes me feel very wonderful. It was an indescribably wonderful experience. As if I had stepped into an unknown territory. My heart was filled with curiosity and a desire to explore. As if a child had discovered a mysterious treasure. Each sound was like a key, unlocking the door to my imagination of the unknown. Nervousness. The nervousness followed me. I was afraid of being discovered. Afraid of breaking the forbidden peace. My hands unconsciously clenched into fists. Palms sweating slightly. Every breath I take becomes cautious. Checking not to make a sound. My body is tense. Like a full bowstring. Ready for any possible accidents. The thrill makes my blood boil. This is a forbidden excitement. An adventurous pleasure. My heart is beating faster and faster. As if it is about to jump out of my chest. My mind races. Imagining the scene behind the door. That makes me blush. That excites me. My mouth was a little dry. My throat felt like it was on fire. Dry. I couldn't help but swallow gently. But found no liquid in my mouth. This feeling made me more nervous and uneasy. As if my body was warning me. Reminding me that I was in a dangerous situation. However, the mysterious voice is like a magic spell. Which makes me unable to extricate myself. Continue to immerse in this tense, exciting and wonderful eavesdropping. At this time, I am no longer satisfied with eavesdropping. I want to see the picture. Therefore, I came closer. I threw the door gap. Finally saw the master bedroom inside the picture. Chapter 25 Boss's Weird Smile. Inside the master bedroom is a 2-meter bed. The bed looks wide and comfortable. Exudes a kind of low-key luxury atmosphere. The bed frame is a delicate wooden structure. Carved with delicate patterns. As if telling an ancient story. The soft mattress is like a cloud. People cannot help but want to lie on it to feel its comfort. The white sheet is flat on the bed. Without a wrinkle. As if a mirror. Reflecting the soft light. At this moment, my eyes cannot help but be attracted by the scene on the bed. I saw the boss and the boss lady. They snuggle closely together. As if a couple in love. The boss's face is full of bad smile. Eyes full of impulse and domination. The boss's wife looks particularly shy. Her cheeks red. Eyes glittering with happiness. Their bodies closely together. As if a whole. Inseparable. Their hands gently clasped together. Conveying each other's warmth and love. Their hair was a bit messy. But added a different kind of charm. Their breathing was rapid and frantic. As if they were enjoying this violent and beautiful moment. My heart surged with a wave of nervous excitement. Both for their love and feel envious. But also for my own eavesdropping behavior and feel ashamed. Just at this moment, the air around me seemed to freeze in an instant. I stood in place nervously. My heart beating. Violently. As if it was going to jump out of my throat. My eyes were fixed on the direction of the master bedroom. My heart was full of tension and excitement. Suddenly, I saw the boss raised his head. The movement was fast and full of teasing. His hair is a little messy, but added a different kind of evil charm. His eyes were originally full of dominance, but now suddenly flashed a bad smile. That bad smile is like a bolt of lightning in the darkness. Instantly lit up his face. Also let my heart surge a chill. The boss's eyes slowly looked toward the direction of the doorway. The eyes seemed to have a kind of penetrating power. Able to see through everything. His eyes were full of teasing. He saw me. My body involuntarily trembled. A kind of fear of being discovered enveloped me. At that very moment, our eyes met. Time seemed to stop at this moment. My brain is blank. Do not know how to react. The boss's eyes were filled with a strange evil charm. My heart is full of panic and uneasiness. Want to immediately escape from this embarrassing place. But just as I was about to flee, my body became stiff from the extreme tension. My mind was racing. Thinking of all the possible consequences. Filled with fear and anxiety. My legs were as heavy as lead. and every step I took required a great deal of courage and strength. The boss suddenly smiled and nodded to me. That smile is like the spring sunshine. Warm and bright. Instantly dispersed the haze in my heart. The boss's eyes did not have the slightest anger and reproach. Instead, filled with a kind of unspeakable satisfaction and gratification. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. That smile also seems to carry a hint of mysterious meaning. The boss did not blame me, which made me feel incredibly surprised and confused. I originally thought that I would be severely reprimanded by the boss, and might even lose my job. However, my boss's reaction was completely unexpected. His tolerance made me feel ashamed, but also made me feel confused about him. He seemed to be pleased with me. This feeling made me even more confused. I don't know why my boss is satisfied with me, and I don't know what I have done to make him so recognized. My mind was full of questions. But at the same time, there was also an inexplicable uneasiness and nervousness. I suddenly remembered what my boss had said to me during the day. At that time, the sunlight poured in the room through the window. The boss called me aside with a mysterious face and said to me in a solemn tone, "Lin Fan, tonight at 12 o'clock, you don't go to sleep and leave the door of the room open." There was an inscrutable light in his eyes, which filled my mind with doubt. I was full of puzzlement, but I could only nod my head. At this moment, looking at the scene in front of me, my mind can't help but emerge a bold guess. Could it be that he deliberately wanted me to see this scene? This idea once appeared. Is like a weed in my heart crazy growth? I tried to recall the boss's expression and tone of voice during the day, trying to find some clues from it. However, the boss's behavior is really difficult to understand. I cannot figure out why he did so. My heart is full of confusion and uneasiness. Don't know how to face the boss next. I didn't know how this would affect my work and life. Just at this time, the air around me seemed to freeze. My heart was pounding. Staring nervously inside the master bedroom. Time seemed to have become incredibly slow at this moment. Every second was like a long century. I saw the boss suddenly stop. He had been immersed in the intimate atmosphere with the boss's wife. But at this moment it was as if the pause button had been pressed. The boss's movements came to an abrupt halt. A complex expression flashed across his face, making it difficult to understand. His eyes seemed to have a hint of dissatisfaction and a hint of helplessness. Then, he got up and took a nightgown and put it on his body. The boss's movements are elegant and calm. He gently sat up from the bed, reached out and took the pajamas placed aside. It was a soft silk pajamas. In the light of the light emitted a soft luster. The boss slowly draped the pajamas over himself, as if he were caressing a precious work of art. There was a tiredness in his eyes. Then, he walked towards the door. The boss's steps were a bit weak. Each step seemed to be a bit weak. His eyes were fixed on the door, as if there was something important waiting for him. As the boss approached, my heart beat faster and faster. Tension and anxiety spread in my heart. I feel that the boss is coming to me. I feel panic. I don't know what the boss will say to me. I don't know what will happen next. My mind was blank. I could only stand still, waiting for fate to decide. Suddenly, I shivered. My body involuntarily trembled. At that moment, as if a current instantly spread throughout the body, let me from the bottom of my heart surge a strong fear. My heart was beating wildly, as if it was going to pop out of my chest. I panicked backward. Footsteps messy and rapid. My mind went blank. Only thinking of escaping from this place that made me feel so scared. I kept backing up, my eyes staring at the direction of the master bedroom, fearing that my boss would suddenly appear in front of me. My hands tightly clenched into fists, nails deep into the palm, but do not feel the slightest pain. I hide in my room. I closed the door quickly, as if I could keep all the dangers out. I leaned my back against the door, breathing heavily, trying to calm myself down. My heart was still pounding and Beads of sweat covered my forehead. I looked around my room, trying to find a sense of security in my familiar surroundings. However, the scene just now is constantly in my mind. Cannot calm down. I sat on the bed, with my hands on my knees, into a deep chagrin. I do not know why the boss would have such behavior. Also, do not know what he will do next. My heart is full of uneasiness and fear. Don't know what awaits me next. Just at this time, the silent atmosphere was broken by a sudden knock on the door. Chapter 26. Come smoke with me on the balcony. The sound was not loud, but it was like a heavy hammer hitting my heart. Each knock seemed to explode in my ears, making my body involuntarily tense up. I panicked. My heartbeat instantly soared to the extreme, as if it was about to burst through my chest. An unspeakable sense of panic swept through my body, leaving me at a loss for words. My mind went blank, not knowing how to react to this unexpected situation. I stared nervously at the door of my room, as if there was an unknown horror hidden behind it. My hands were clenched together, trembling slightly, with sweaty palms. I knew it was the boss. This realization made my mind even more uneasy. I don't know why the boss would come to me, and I don't know what he would say to me. I recalled the scene just now. My heart was filled with guilt and anxiety. I was afraid that my boss would blame me, afraid that I would lose my job. My thoughts were confused. All kinds of speculations and worries were intertwined in my mind, making me fall into a deep fear. Lin Fan, open the door. The boss's voice came from outside the door. The voice was steady and strong, with a kind of unquestionable majesty. Every word was like a heavy hammer hitting my heart, making my body involuntarily tremble. The voice seemed to contain an invisible pressure, making me feel irresistible. I knew I had to open the door. The thought flashed through my mind, but it was like a boulder in my heart. I knew that there was no use running away. I had to face the boss. My heart is full of tension and uneasiness. Don't know what the boss will say to me. Also, don't know what will be waiting for me, the consequences. My hand trembled slightly, slowly reached for the door handle, as if it was a fateful switch. Every movement seemed so difficult, as if my body was bound by an invisible force. Finally, I still summoned up the courage, gently turned the doorknob, and opened the door. After the door was opened, a tense atmosphere came out. The boss stood quietly outside the door, with an inscrutable look on his face. His eyes slowly fell on my body. The eyes seemed to contain countless words, but led a person difficult to read. The boss looked at me with a smile on his face. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, revealing a warm and mysterious smile. That smile is like the spring sunshine. Instantly dispersed the haze in my heart. His eyes were full of kindness and goodwill, as if nothing had just happened. His smile made me feel immensely surprised and confused. I do not know why the boss would look at me like this. Also, do not know what he was thinking. Come to the balcony with me for a smoke. The boss's voice was low and magnetic, like a melody echoing in my ears. His tone of voice carries a kind of power that cannot be refused, so that I cannot help but follow his footsteps. My heart is full of doubts and uneasiness. Do not know why the boss at this time to invite me to the balcony to smoke. My mind was racing, trying to find some clues from the boss's words and behavior. However, the boss's behavior is really difficult to understand. I cannot figure out his intentions. I can only silently follow the boss toward the balcony, waiting for his next move. To the balcony, the breeze of the night gently brushed by, bringing a hint of coolness. The moonlight sprinkled on the ground like water, creating a peaceful and mysterious atmosphere. The boss stood there quietly, facing the city lights. His shadow in the moonlight appears a little hazy. The boss did not speak. His face is still with that elusive look. His eyes were deep and distant, as if he was thinking about something important. He just silently took out a box of cigarettes from his pocket, gently opened, and then took out a cigarette and handed it to me. The cigarettes lay quietly between the boss's fingers, emitting a faint smell of tobacco. The boss's movements were elegant and calm, as if he was performing a solemn ceremony. His eyes were fixed on me, as if waiting for my response. I hesitated for a moment, and then reached out to take the cigarette. My fingers were trembling slightly, and my heart was filled with nervousness and anxiety. I don't know why the boss gave me a cigarette at this time, and I don't know what he was thinking. I can only silently took the cigarette, waiting for the boss's next instruction. "How is it? My wife is okay. What do you feel after seeing her?" The boss suddenly spoke. His voice was particularly clear in the silent night sky. Every word seemed to carry an invisible pressure. The boss's eyes stared at me. There is a hint of triumph in that gaze, but also seems to be looking forward to my answer. At this time heart a panic. Completely do not know how to respond to the boss's question. My brain is running fast, trying to find a suitable answer, but found myself thinking as if into a mess. The boss's words were like a heavy bomb. In my heart set off shock waves. I recalled the scene I had just seen. The beauty and voice of the boss's wife was still vivid in my mind. But at the moment, I couldn't use words to describe my feelings. I gulped nervously, holding the cigarette tightly in my hand, as if it was my only life-saving straw. My lips trembled slightly, trying to organize a suitable sentence to answer the boss. However, my throat is like something blocked. A word cannot come out. I can only stand there awkwardly, looking at the boss, at a loss for words. I don't know how to answer. A little speechless. My brain was in chaos. All kinds of thoughts like leaves flying around in the wind. The boss's question put me in a state of extreme embarrassment and confusion. I did not expect him to say such a thing. My mouth opened slightly, but could not produce any sound, as if sealed by an invisible force. My eyes wandered, not dare to look at the boss, heart full of anxiety and panic. The boss smiled mysteriously. That smile seems to hide countless secrets and deep meaning. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, revealing a smile that made people unable to understand. His eyes flickered with a strange light, as if hinting at something. "Do a good job, and my wife will be yours." The boss's words were like a bolt from the blue in my ears. I stared wide-eyed, incredibly at the boss, wondering if I had heard wrong. This sentence is really too shocking. Let me completely unable to understand the intentions of the boss. My heart surged a strong shock and doubt. Do not know why the boss would say such ridiculous words, but it seems that our plan was originally so. Seems to be very reasonable. I stood there dumbfounded. Hand in the cigarette unconsciously fell to the ground. The whole person as if they were frozen. Cannot make any reaction. Chapter 27. Later you open the door. When the boss left, I do not know. Time seemed to stand still at that moment. My thoughts were still immersed in the boss's shocking words, completely unaware of the boss's departure. Everything around me became blurred. My senses seemed to lose their effect. The whole world is only left with my inner chaos and confusion. I stood frozen in place, like a lost soul of the puppet. No awareness of the changes around me. When I came back to my senses, the boss was already in the bathroom taking a shower. The sound of running water seemed to come from a distant place, gradually pulling me back to reality from the trance. I slowly raised my head, looked around, but did not see the figure of the boss. My eyes involuntarily cast to the direction of the bathroom. Through the semi-transparent glass door, vaguely can see the boss's silhouette in the water mist looming. My heart welled up a complex emotion. With surprise, with confusion, and a trace of inexplicable uneasiness. I don't know why the boss let me see this scene today. Nor do I know what will happen next. My brain was once again in a state of confusion. All kinds of speculations and worries were spreading in my mind. I looked in the direction of the bathroom. Behind the translucent glass door, vapor filled. Vaguely see the vague figure of the boss. My eyes lingered on the door for a second. My mind was in a whirlwind of thoughts. Everything that had just happened was like a strange dream, making me feel incredibly confused and disoriented. I tried to find some answers from the blurred scene. But, except for the rising vapor, nothing could be seen. Taking a deep breath, I tried to calm myself down. The air in my nostrils, with a coolness, cleared my mind a little. I closed my eyes tightly, feeling the coolness spread through my body, trying to dispel the confusion and anxiety in my mind. When I opened my eyes again, there was already more determination in my heart. I was ready to go back to my room. I slowly turned around. My feet were a little heavy. Every step I took was like saying goodbye to what I had just experienced. My heart is full of contradictions. Don't know how to face the boss. Also don't know what will happen in the future. But I know. At this moment I need a quiet space. Let myself think about it. I took a firm step toward my room. Behind the bathroom, the sound of running water is still continuing, as if telling an unspeakable story. After a while, the silence was broken by a sudden knock on the door. The sound is not loud, but in this silent space seems particularly clear, as if a heavy hammer on my heart. Each knock makes my heart beat faster. A kind of nervousness and uneasiness quickly spread in my heart. The boss knocked on my door again. His knocking sound has a unique rhythm. Not slow, but let a person cannot be ignored. I stood in the room, staring blankly at the door, my heart filled with doubt and anxiety. I do not know why the boss came to me again. Also do not know what kind of news he will bring this time. My mind was racing, trying to find some clues from my previous experience, to guess my boss's intentions. However, my thoughts are like a mess. How can not make sense of it? I can only open the door. Boss into the room. Look at me. When my wife takes a shower, you leave the door open, you know what I mean? The boss said mysteriously. His voice was low and magnetic. Every word seemed to carry a mysterious power. The boss's tone was full of hints. So I instantly understood what he meant. A strong shock welled up in my heart. I hadn't expected my boss to make such a ridiculous request. My face instantly turned pale. My lips trembled slightly. I didn't know how to respond to the boss's words. My mind went blank. And I felt that the world had become a ridiculous place at this moment. The boss patted my shoulder. The strength of the hand is not light and not heavy, but seems to carry 1,000 pounds of force. Make my body slightly shaken. At that moment, my thoughts seemed to freeze. My brain was blank. Only felt the warmth of the boss's hand through the clothes to my skin. The boss's hand lingered on my shoulder for a moment, as if conveying some kind of unspeakable message. Then, the boss left. The owner's movements were very dry. The moment he turned around, the corner of his coat fluttered gently, bringing up a breeze. The sound of his footsteps in the corridor is gradually moving away. Each step is like a step on my heart, making my mood heavier and heavier. I looked at the back of the boss leaving. The back in the dim light seems a little blurred, but also incomparably tall. The boss's figure gradually disappeared from my sight, leaving me standing alone. My heart is full of confusion, anxiety, and entanglement. I stared blankly at the boss's back. My eyes were empty and confused, as if they had lost their focus. The boss's back was getting smaller and smaller in my sight. Finally disappeared in the master bedroom. I still stood there motionless, as if I had been cast a spell. My heart turned upside down. All kinds of emotions are intertwined. Let me cannot calm down. I don't know why the boss would make such a strange request. Also don't know how I should respond. I felt that I was in a huge dilemma, unable to extricate myself. But I was also a little bit excited and expectant. Time passed slowly in the silence, as if stretched out. The air around me seemed to freeze, so quiet that one could hear one's own heartbeat. Sure enough, not long after, I heard a footstep. The sound of light footsteps broke the silence. The footsteps were very, very light. If not, but like a wake-up call in my heart. I strained my ears, listening intently to every little sound. The next thing I knew, I could hear someone entering the bathroom. The sound was so clear. The bathroom door was gently pushed open. There was a slight creak. Then, there was a faint sound of water running, as if someone was adjusting the temperature of the water. My heartbeat instantly accelerated. An indescribable feeling of nervousness surged to my heart. I know. That is the boss's wife went to take a bath. This knowledge makes my mood become more complicated. Various thoughts in my mind intertwined and entangled. This thought flashed in my mind, but it was like a huge stone in my heart. My mood is extremely torn. On the one hand, I am also very curious about the boss's wife and heart. On the other hand, I didn't know how to deal with the situation. My brain was racing, trying to find a suitable solution. But I had no clue. I could only put my ear to the door with nervous excitement, listening to the sound of running water coming from the bathroom. My heart was full of excitement and blood boiling. Chapter 28: The Translucent Bathroom. I thought back to the boss's words, which echoed in my mind like a magic spell. Every word seemed to carry a strange power, making my heart full of struggles and contradictions. The boss's mysterious expression, low voice, and that incomprehensible request appeared in front of my eyes one by one, like a movie screen constantly switching. My brain fell into a mess. All kinds of emotions in the heart intertwined and entangled. Let me feel incomparable confusion and bewilderment. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. The air passing through my nostrils, with a hint of coolness, cleared my mind a little. I closed my eyes tightly, feeling the coolness spreading through my body, trying to dispel the confusion and uneasiness in my mind. When I opened my eyes again, my heart was already more determined. But I was quickly controlled by desire. I quietly opened my door. My movements were extremely careful, as if carrying out a secret operation. The sound of the door's shaft turning in the silence was particularly clear. Each slight creak made my heart beat faster. I stared nervously at the gap in the door, fearing to make any sound. The door slowly opened. A faint light from the door cast in, illuminated the small space in front of me. My first glance was to the opposite side of the bathroom. My eyes went through the narrow doorway and to the opposite bathroom. The door was closed, and I could see a thin layer of vapor inside. The soft light emanated from inside, creating a mysterious and hazy atmosphere. My heart was beating faster and faster. A kind of nervousness and excitement was spreading in my heart. I don't know why I did what I did, and I don't know what will happen next. My heart was full of excitement and anxiety, but I couldn't control my curiosity. Through the semi-transparent glass door of the bathroom, the blurred light and shadow intertwined into a mysterious picture. The faint light refracted and scattered on the glass, creating a hazy and disorienting atmosphere. My eyes were fixed on the door, as if pulled by an invisible force. I saw a slim figure. Is the boss's wife. The figure of the boss's wife was hidden under the vapor, like a spirit coming out of a dream. Her figure is graceful, curvy. Every contour exudes a kind of elegant charm. The slender waist, long legs, and slightly undulating shoulder line, all in this translucent glass behind the outline of a moving picture. Her movements are gentle and graceful, as if she were performing a silent dance. The figure is sometimes still, sometimes slightly swaying. Every movement is full of feminine softness and mystery. My heartbeat seemed to stop at this moment. The whole world seemed to be left with that slender figure and my nervous breathing. My breathing is rapid. Each breath carries a heavy sense of oppression. Chest violently undulating, as if there is an invisible hand tightly clutched my heart, so that I cannot calm down. My eyes are firmly staring at the translucent glass door of the bathroom. The slim figure as a magnet firmly attracted my eyes. so that I cannot move away. Seeing this scene, my brain instantly blank. All thoughts are frozen in this moment. That hazy figure in the vapor swaying, as if a beautiful painting, exudes a kind of irresistible charm. My heart surged with a strong impulse. A kind of primitive desire spread rapidly in my body. I feel as if I have lost my mind, driven by an uncontrollable force. I really couldn't control myself. My body involuntarily leaned forward, as if pulled by a mysterious force. My hands were trembling slightly. My heart was full of contradictions and struggles. Reason is telling me that I should immediately turn around and leave, away from this full of temptation scene. But the deep desire in my heart makes me unable to move my feet. My eyes are still locked tightly on that figure. Cannot be extricated. I feel as if I fell into an endless vortex. Deeper and deeper. Cannot escape. I finally understood why the boss said those words to me. In this instant, countless thoughts in my mind flashed rapidly, like a bright shooting star across the night sky. The boss's mysterious smile, meaningful words, and his unique eyes had become clear at this moment. I seem to see his deepest calculations and intentions. Also understand why he would make such a shocking move. This is really a benefit for me. This idea in my heart continues to amplify. Like a raging tide, like unstoppable. The slender figure swayed in front of my eyes, exuding an irresistible charm. I began to imagine all kinds of possible scenarios, heart full of expectation and excitement. This was indeed a rare opportunity. A benefit that made my heart beat faster. My blood boil. I felt like I was in a dream world. All my desires were ignited at this moment. However, behind this excitement, a trace of uneasiness also crept into my heart. I know that such behavior is immoral, is against ethics and principles. But the temptation was too great for me to resist. I fell into a deep contradiction. Do not know how to choose. I don't know how long had passed. Time seemed to lose its meaning in this moment. As if I had been cast a spell. Stood still. Eyes still staring at the translucent glass door of the bathroom. Everything around me became blurred. My senses seemed to lose their effect. The whole world is only that slim figure and my rapid breathing sound. My mind was in a state of confusion. All kinds of thoughts fluttered around like leaves in the wind. I feel ashamed and uneasy for my own behavior, but cannot resist the strong temptation. In this contradictory emotions, time passes quietly, but I do not realize. Just at this time, I saw the boss lady going out of the bathroom. At that moment, my heartbeat seemed to skip a beat. The figure of the boss's wife gradually became clear in the vapor. Her movements elegant and calm, as if a noble goddess. She turned slightly, reached out to take the towel hanging on the side. That moment of action is full of feminine softness. However, my heart did not have the slightest appreciation. Replaced by endless fear and panic. I stared at this scene with wide eyes, incredulously, and a strong sense of crisis welled up in my heart. I was shocked. My body involuntarily trembled. My face instantly became pale, lips slightly trembling. Do not know how to deal with this unexpected situation. My mind was racing, trying to find a solution. But I had no idea. Fear overwhelmed me like a tidal wave, making me unable to think, unable to act. I felt as if I was plunged into an endless abyss, unable to extricate myself. Finally, my body sprang back like a spring, turned around and rushed toward my room. My footsteps were panicked and hurried. Each step seemed to be a race against time. I didn't dare to look back, fearing to see the surprised and angry expression of the boss's wife. I only have one thought in my mind. That is to escape from this dangerous place as soon as possible. I rushed into the room, gently closed the door, as if this can block all the dangers out of the door. My back is against the door. Breathing heavily, my heart is full of tension and excitement. Chapter 29, The Inner Turmoil. I pressed my ear against the door, and felt a chill in my ear from the cold door panel. My movements were careful, as if I was carrying out a secret operation. My heart was still beating fast, and the tension was spreading in my heart. I listened intently to the movements outside the door, checking not to miss the slightest sound. I heard the footsteps of the boss's wife. The sound was very light and gentle, but like a heavy hammer hitting my heart. Each footstep makes my body slightly shaken. A kind of nervousness and uneasiness quickly spread in my heart. The boss lady's footsteps are slow and steady, as if telling her elegance and calm. However, to my ears, these footsteps are full of excitement and uneasiness. She was going back to the master bedroom. The thought flashed through my mind, relaxing my mood a little. I imagined the elegant figure of my boss's wife moving slowly down the corridor towards the master bedroom. My mind was filled with nervousness, hoping that she would soon return to the room and get me out of this embarrassing and dangerous situation. Finally, I breathed a sigh of relief. The tension ebbed like a tidal wave, replaced by a deep sense of exhaustion and relaxation. My body seemed to lose its strength and slowly slid to the floor. My breathing was still rapid, but the pressure in my heart was much less. I closed my eyes, feeling the moment of peace and relaxation. My heart filled with emotion. I don't know why I just did such a stupid behavior. Also don't know how to face the boss and the boss's wife in the future. But at this moment, I just want to take a good rest. Let my mood calm down. The surroundings suddenly quiet, as if the whole world has fallen into a silence. The tense atmosphere of the previous gradually dissipated like smoke, leaving only a suffocating tranquility. The air in the room seems to be frozen, without a trace of wind flow, so quiet that you can even hear your own heartbeat. That originally subtle breathing sound at this time also became particularly clear. Every breath seems to be in this silent space issued a heavy echo. I walked to the bed and lay down. My feet are heavy and slow. Each step is like crossing an invisible barrier. The bed was soft and comfortable, yet my body could not relax. My mind was still in a state of extreme tension and anxiety, and what had just happened was replaying in my mind like a movie. I lay there, staring blankly at the ceiling, my thoughts drifting away. But the image of what I had just seen was still in my mind. The slim figure of the boss's wife lingered in my mind. The hazy vapor, the elegant movements, and the hidden curves were all deeply engraved in my memory as if they were branded. It was as if my brain had lost control of itself and kept replaying the scene over and over again, making me unable to extricate myself. My heart was filled with shame and self-blame, and at the same time there was an unspeakable impulse. I tried to get these images out of my mind, but they were like stubborn ghosts, and never left. My mouth was dry. My throat felt like it was on fire, dry and sore. My lips trembled slightly, longing for a drop of water. The dryness of my mouth was not just a physical discomfort. It was an inner burning. I felt like I was in a desert, alone and helpless. My heart is full of contradictions and struggles. Don't know how to face my heart. Also don't know how to get out of this predicament. My breathing is getting more and more rapid. Every breath is like pulling a heavy bellows with difficulty. The chest is violently undulating, as if there is an invisible hand tightly clutching my heart, so that I cannot calm down. The rapid breathing sound in the silent room seems particularly clear, like the thunder before the storm, constantly echoed in my ears. Eventually, I reached for the trash can at the foot of the bed. My movements a little panicked, as if in an emergency rescue operation. My fingers were trembling, gripping the edge of the trash can tightly, pulling it slowly to my side. The cold plastic texture of the trash can touched my skin, giving me an inexplicable chill. Then, I took a few sheets of toilet paper and got under the covers. The comforter was like a warm haven, giving me a false sense of security. I carefully curled up my body, as if a wounded animal, trying to avoid the danger of the outside world. The darkness of the quilt enveloped me, giving me an oppressive sense of tranquility. The sound of my heartbeat was especially clear in this small space. Each beat was like a knock on my soul. My mind was filled with the image of what I had just seen. A few more balls of toilet paper soon appeared in the garbage can. The toilet paper was like snowflakes falling into the trash can. With a sense of helplessness and shame, each ball of toilet paper seemed to carry my sins and desires. They lay quietly in the trash can, like a silent condemnation of my behavior. My heart was filled with remorse. I knew I had just done something unforgivable. But at that moment, my reason has been consumed by desire. Cannot control their own behavior. Now, looking at the several balls of toilet paper in the garbage can, I feel a kind of deep chagrin. I don't know how to face my heart. Also don't know how to get out of this predicament. When the warm and bright sunshine through the window, gently shining on my face, the golden light as if a pair of gentle hands gently caress my skin. I first felt a slight warmth on my face. And then, the light seemed to gradually penetrate into my consciousness. Like a silent alarm clock, woke up my sleeping mind. I suddenly opened my eyes. That moment, my vision is still a little blurred. The world in front of me seems to be covered in a thin veil. I blinked, trying to adapt to this sudden light. With the vision gradually clear, I saw the familiar room layout. The white ceiling, light blue curtains, and neatly arranged furniture. Everything seemed so serene and peaceful. I can't believe that. I slept through the night without even realizing it. It was as if time had flown by during my slumber, leaving no trace behind. Last night's tension, confusion and anxiety. This moment seems to be this morning's sunshine dispersed, replaced by a kind of light serenity and relief. I lie quietly in bed, feeling the warmth of the sun. A wave of inexplicable feelings welled up in my heart. A new day has come, and I do not know what will be waiting for me. Suddenly, a crisp knock on the door broke the morning quiet. There was a knock on my room door. Chapter 30. Getting up for breakfast. The sound seemed to stand out in the silence of the room. Each knock seemed to hit my heart heavily, making my heart beat faster involuntarily. My mind was instantly flooded with countless speculations and uneasiness. I didn't know whether it was the boss's wife or the boss standing outside the door. The thought that it could be either of them filled my heart with tension and fear. As if I could see their figures standing outside the door, their mysterious expressions and inscrutable eyes, making it impossible for me to judge their intentions. My mind was racing, trying to think of a way to cope. But I had no idea. I can only lie nervously on the bed, quietly listening to the movement outside the door, waiting for the fate to be pronounced. Lin Fan, get up and have breakfast. The boss's wife's voice came. The voice was gentle and melodious, like a spring breeze gently brushing against my ears. However, in my ears, this voice is full of danger and threat. I remembered the events of last night. A strong sense of shame and uneasiness welled up in my heart. I don't know whether the boss's wife will notice my abnormality. Also don't know how she feels at this moment. My body involuntarily trembled. My lips trembled slightly. I do not know how to respond to her call. I wanted to pretend not to hear. Continue to lie on the bed to escape reality. But I know it is impossible. Finally, I took a deep breath, tried to calm myself down, and slowly sat up from the bed. I hurriedly put on my clothes in a hurry. The movement is panicked and hurried, as if in a race against time. My fingers were trembling, trying to fasten the buttons, zipping up the zipper. My heart was full of nervousness and anxiety. I put on the clothes, while in my mind constantly thinking about how to face the boss's wife, what to say to hide their inner panic. Finally got dressed. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. Then, I slowly reached out my hand, gripped the door handle, the cold metal texture of my heart surging a chill. I gently turned the doorknob. With a slight click, the room door slowly opened. I then saw the boss's wife standing outside the door. Her silhouette in the early morning sunshine looks particularly beautiful and touching. She was wearing a light dress. Long hair. Eyes gentle and bright. The corners of her mouth are slightly uplifted. With a faint smile. As if the flowers blooming in the spring. However, in my opinion, her smile is full of mystery and unknown. My heartbeat seemed to skip a beat at this moment. An indescribable nervousness quickly spread in my heart. I didn't know whether the boss's wife had noticed my abnormality. I can only stand there awkwardly, looking at her. The boss's wife looked at me with a smile. The smile was like the brightest sunshine in spring. Warm and bright. Her eyes are full of tenderness and kindness. As if a clear lake. Without a ripple. The corners of her mouth slightly raised. Outlined a beautiful arc. That smile with a kind of reassuring power. She stood there quietly. Elegant posture. Extraordinary temperament. Her long hair is as smooth as silk. Gently fluttering in the breeze. Her body exudes a light fragrance. That is a kind of intoxicating flavor. Her dress is simple and generous. But without losing the sense of fashion. Showing the charm of mature women. I looked at the boss's wife. Her expression did not have any abnormalities. Her expression is natural and calm. Not the slightest embarrassment or uncomfortable. Her eyes were clear and bright. Without any hiding or doubt. Her demeanor was calm and elegant. Without any panic or haste. As if nothing had happened yesterday. All the things have been quietly erased by time. Leaving no trace. Her smile is still so warm. Her eyes are still so gentle. Her demeanor is still so elegant. As if everything yesterday was just an unreal dream. Never really happened. My heart welled up a complex emotion. There is surprise. There is doubt. There is happiness. There is also a trace of unspeakable loss. I don't know whether the boss's wife has really forgotten yesterday's events. Or is deliberately hiding it. But at that moment, I can only choose to believe her performance. As if nothing had happened. Come on, let's go down for breakfast. The boss lady said with a smile. That smile is as bright and colorful as a blooming flower. Her voice is gentle and pleasant. As if the breeze in the spring gently brushed the ear. She slightly turned her body. Made a gesture of invitation. Elegant posture to show the charm of mature women. Finish eating and send your boss to work. She then added. With a hint of gentleness in her eyes. Her words were simple and clear. Yet full of affinity. It was as if it was a normal thing to do. Nothing special. Her smile was always on her face. Giving people a sense of reassurance. I stood there. Looking at the boss lady's smile and demeanor. The tension and anxiety in my heart gradually dissipated. I nodded. Responded, yes, boss lady. Then followed her. Toward the downstairs. Along the way. My feelings were complex and subtle. I don't know how to face the boss and the boss's wife. Also don't know whether yesterday's events will have an impact on our relationship. But looking at the calm expression and natural demeanor of the boss's wife, I felt that perhaps everything is not as bad as I thought. Maybe the boss's wife really forgot about yesterday's incident. Or she chose to forgive and understand. In any case, I decided to cherish this opportunity. Try to do my job. And never let anything like this happen again. Finally, we slowly came downstairs. The footsteps on the stairwell seemed to carry a nervous rhythm. Each step made my heart beat faster. When our figures appeared in the hall downstairs, an indescribable sense of oppression hit us. The boss was already waiting for us at the table. He sat there quietly. With a straight posture. With a powerful aura. His eyes were deep and sharp. As if he could see through everything. His face is serious and calm. Without the slightest change of expression. His hands gently placed on the table. Fingers slightly bent. Reveals a kind of control of all confidence. The boss's presence makes the whole space is filled with a kind of tense atmosphere. Let a person dare not easily relax. The boss revealed a mysterious smile to me. That smile is like lightning in the night sky. Instantly illuminated my soul. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, outlining a mysterious arc. His eyes shone with an elusive light, making it impossible to tell what he was really thinking. That smile seems to contain countless secrets and deep meaning. Let me into a deep thought. I don't know what the boss's smile means. And I don't know whether he has noticed my abnormality. My heart is full of doubts and uneasiness. But in front of the boss, I do not dare to show the slightest difference. I can only barely squeeze out a smile, responding to the boss's smile, and then silently walk to the table, waiting for the next thing.